Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Orange County School Board's work session, which has been scheduled for today, Thursday, March 7th, 2024, for the purpose of discussing the Esser ESSER update. The public will not have an opportunity to participate in this work session to provide public comment because this is not a regularly scheduled school board meeting and no action will be taken. And there will be no open public comment period in which the public would normally address the school board on relevant topics that are related to the work of the board. Thank you so much for those of you who are joining us this morning. Board members are attending in person. However, we do not have all board members present. Currently, Member Gould is en route, and I know she'll be here momentarily, and so that we can focus on the meeting itself. To my fellow board members, district staff, please remember when speaking into the microphone, make sure it's turned on and speak directly into it so that our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. And now we will take a moment of silence, and I'll invite those in the audience to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And now for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
All right, Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are here this afternoon as a follow-up to a previous work session where our team has been being impacted due to the ending of Esser funds. Our team has worked on the prioritized items, is ready to present additional information regarding those items and funding, as well as some recommendations. And then after, I'll make some closing remarks. I'll turn it over to Doreen Concolino, who will start the presentation, followed by Josie Medina, James Russo, Mary Bridges, Kim Gilbert, Wendy Ivory, and Ian Gesundheit. Carol Boyd.
Good morning, Chair Jacobs, school board members, and superintendent's position chart. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the federal government provided which has been critical to the health, safety, and academic welfare of our students. As we've previously discussed, this funding will expire in September of 2024, bringing to fruition return on investment. The prioritization of these initiatives presented to you today is vital to our budget development. On today's agenda, this presentation will highlight the programs and positions previously presented to the board, along with any cost revisions and alternate funding, if it has been identified. Following this review, a suggested prioritization of these initiatives will be specified for the board's consideration. Finally, there will be a quick overview of the district's fiscal year 2025 financial obligations. And I will now turn it over to Josie Medina, Senior Director of Multilingual Services, to begin our review.
During the Skyward implementation, gaps were identified, impacting the district and schools' ESA compliance. The developed plan included direct compliance support. Additionally, Skyward automations have been developed and implemented to mitigate the identified gaps. After analyzing comparable school district structures, we propose a department reorganization that will allow the district to sustain the elevation platform while continuing to monitor ESA compliance for all schools. The proposed reorganization consists of reducing the ESA compliance team from 18 members to 5 and having the instructional personnel support their assigned schools with instruction and ESA compliance. With the implemented Skyward automations, elevation, and the school-based ESA compliance specialists, we can continue to promote school support and no impact to the general fund. I will now turn it over.
I just have a question for the superintendent. As we're going through this presentation today, like what we just heard, that the original cost was $378,000 and it's zero. So this wouldn't be something that we can consider because you've already found the funds for this. So we're only looking at things, everything in this packet are things that we've been doing that we no longer have the money for, except for the ones that have been zeroed out. Is that correct?
The information that's being presented this afternoon directly relates to the items that were presented at the previous work session. We went back and found, in some cases, dollars to be able to offset the cost of the program. In some cases, we may have decided that there were duplicate services. And in some cases, we are hopeful, as many of you know, the state, why we were able to come to an agreement, the decline in the increase of SRS funding as well as our budget, when our team is able to dig into it, we'll be able to find the additional dollars needed to fund those items that we currently do not have dollars for. Additionally, you will see a prioritized list based on staff's recommendation that if we are not able to find all of the dollars, we would target the areas by priority to fund them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Actually, before we move on, Mr. Russo, I apologize. Member Felder had asked for an opportunity to make some comments at the beginning of the meeting, and I failed to recognize her. So, Member Felder, please.
Thank you, Chair. Our mistake is to believe at one and the same time that things stay put, yet they change. Nothing stays the same. It's unexpected. I wrote that poem back in February 1993. Your kindness toward me during my time of illness and recovery was overwhelming. Your calls, your visits, your prayers, they kept me and are yet keeping me. Sincerely, Vicki Elaine Felder. I have thank you very much. Thank you.
Member Felder, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for being here and being with us during impasse. I know that is not easy for you, but it is of great value to not just the district, but to each one of us that has the honor of serving with you. Thank you
so much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Russo.
Study Island Science is used in grades 3 through 8 to allow students to build fluency in science concepts and vocabulary. During the 21-22 and 22-23 school years, the OCPS Research Department conducted a correlational study around the implementation of Study Island. The findings indicated a positive correlation between the use of Study Island and the outcomes on the Progress Monitoring Assessment 3 and the statewide science assessments. These outcomes resulted in a recommendation strong alignment with the resource and the expected acquisition of science knowledge for students. While not the only factor, since the implementation of Study Island Science will shift to Title IV and will have no impact, is a standards-aligned mathematics supplemental program used to fill potential learning gaps in prerequisite skills and/or add valuable practice for grade-level skills. Through grant funding, OCPS has implemented a district-wide purchase for Algebra 1 and Geometry to support our OCPS teachers and students. Feedback was received by teachers and administrators, and the IXL purchase aligned with the collaborative recommendation. Since implementing IXL district-wide for algebra and geometry, proficiency has increased by 8% in algebra and 3% in geometry on the spring 2023 end-of-course exams. The fiscal impact of $390,000 was revisited to bring forward an option at a reduced cost. The option would focus on high school Algebra 1, 1A, and Geometry for $180,000. This revised cost and a reprioritization of the existing instructional materials operating budget will have no further impact on the general fund. You have any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Russo. Let me call first on Member Gould.
Funding for things that were supported by Esser into like Title I and the school's budget, are they having to eliminate other things that were in the curriculum or in their budgets? Or
Program. For Title IV, the items for Title IV are not meant to be long-term as a general rule. And so the money to fund the programming here is coming because something else is shifted out and there are available dollars. So in this particular case, there's no impact to additional programming.
Okay, so it's a reprioritization. It doesn't mean that we've just necessarily added in. We've had to reprioritize impact of all programs, and then you've chosen which one.
Yes,
Okay.
and overall, our instructional materials budget has been for several years, even when I was chief academic officer, we never were able to meet the allocation by the state. We always had to dip into non-recurring funds. And so there's been an effort over the last 2 years to streamline that, and we're continuing to do that, yielding and then making decisions about which programs we will continue and which ones will go away or sunset.
Okay, Member Castrodeno, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not familiar with what Title IV covers. Can you explain, or someone explain what Title IV is for?
Title IV is an entitlement program. It's for innovative programs under well-rounded education, safe and healthy, and technology.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Gould answered one of my questions. The IXL, why did we decide to get rid of it in middle school?
So it was a reprioritization. So when we look at our supplemental allocations and looking at return on investment, originally, because we paid for Algebra 1 and Geometry student, so we prioritized which student would this program benefit the most, not that it wouldn't benefit both of them. And then we do
Perfect sense. And then, and I'm asking this because I honestly don't know, but is 3% in geometry, is that a good return on the investment?
It was the first year that we utilized it, so it was a positive gain because we went pre-pandemic, we were higher, pandemic, it dropped down, so now we're returning back to some of that growth. So we wanted to
Give it some more time.
and there was a need for additional resources to help students fill those gaps that we saw during the pandemic and now post-pandemic.
Okay, thank you so much.
Member Salamanca.
Yeah, my question is along the same lines, thank you, Chair, which is, so if I am a 7th or 8th grader in algebra, I no longer will have access to this?
According to this plan, no, they wouldn't. It would be a school-based purchase.
Got it, okay, yeah. I know several of my schools definitely use that are using IXL. Has it been just, like, we had it offered for everyone in middle school for algebra, even if they were in the class, or like how was it structured? Or was it really just the accelerated folks that used to this?
So with this Esser fund, our standard courses had access and our algebra and geometry courses had access.
Got it, okay. Yeah, I mean, I do think I'm going to get some parents that they do like IXL a lot, so it's just good for me to know that because it is, I think, teachers, from what I've heard, use this program called, I wrote it down here somewhere, Math Nation, and then IXL.
more time with IXLs. So you're saying that this is just specific for algebra and geometry or other IXLs, or
Yes.
explain that again?
So with the ESSER 3 funding, we paid for algebra and geometry only out of ESSER 3 with IXL. With our supplemental allocation, we paid for standard 6th, standard 7th, standard 8th, and then we also had IXL for high school and all of our algebra students in middle and prioritizing the funds and looking within the dollars we have. It was to prioritize the high school students because they usually need more remediation, and we do not purchase it currently for accelerated students, the kids that are sitting in 6th accelerated and 7th accelerated. It is a school-based purchase currently as well, so this would align with that same process.
Okay. Is there a way for us to see how much that costs for a school to purchase that? Or at least in the future, I know you may not have that information right now, but maybe some information that would be helpful for us to see how much that would cost a school.
Sense of maybe how many students are in that 6th, 7th, 8th grade algebra and geometry. Like I understand why we're doing this, but I almost feel like a 7th grader have access to this, but if you're 6th or 8th, 7th or 8th grader, you won't have access to this. It just feels a little bit inversely. It doesn't quite make sense.
Requirements and postgraduate coursework, we found that those students would have more struggles, so pulling a resource from those students versus the accelerated students, just weighing the pros and cons.
And let me recognize the superintendent.
So the cost is $210,000. You just subtract the 180 from 390. Typically, students who are taking algebra and geometry in high school are advanced. They don't need remediation. That's not to say that some may not benefit from the use of the program, but the number of students that might need intervention is much smaller than you would have in an algebra class in 9th grade or a geometry class. Those are our top level students, and anyone is able to progress. The students that are typically taking algebra and geometry in high school have significant math deficits, although not all, but the vast majority of them. They struggle with basic number facts, problem solving, much greater. And I would venture to say that the number of students in our middle schools that are taking algebra and geometry, very few of them have not scored at a level 4 or 5. Dollars that we're going to be pulling from the general fund. This was, quite frankly, one of the easier decisions, because when you look at the students that are in these courses that are not going to have it, they tend not to need it, although a school can choose to continue to purchase it, as they are able to do that now for their regular 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes.
As a reminder, you were provided a chart to go along with my slides for additional information. To retain 23 licensed mental health counselors, 57 social workers, and 10 school counselors paid for with Esser funds, the cost would be $7.1 million. To reduce that amount, the Student Services Department looked at the current mental health assistance allocation fund and found where reductions could be made. Currently, 7 mental health counselor positions and 5 social worker positions are vacant, although 6 district mental health positions also vacant. Step, a resiliency curriculum for all elementary schools, and base education for secondary schools. Base education is a platform with skill-building modules for the positive alternative to school suspension, or PASS, rooms at schools. For 24-25, these programs will be available to schools for purchase through their school funds. All indications point to an increase in the mental health assistance allocation next school year. The additional funding will go towards salary and health aid, direct school-based social work, and mental health counselors to adequately serve our schools. Any portion?
Chair, those will now have to be purchased
by the school. So what we found is there are certain schools that are using it with fidelity in multiple grade levels, but a lot of the schools were either using it for just one grade level, and many schools were using Harmony or other resiliency resources. So this way, if a school was using it, yes, they would have to use their own school.
Okay. So how much would it cost a school? Have you guys broken that down?
We have not. I could get that information for you.
Okay. I was just, because I know the budgets for principals are going to be tight, and there's a lot of angst amongst our principals.
And then for the base education, which is in the past classes, and they're in there for district.
For principal, for school. I know, there's no money. Oh, there's no money.
Superintendent?
I may have been remiss in mentioning this. These are recommendations to go and try and find money for some of these items that we have eliminated or have shifted cost to school to the school. So there's strictly recommendations based on the review by the staff, looking at various data points, and trying to come within a certain amount, knowing that the pot is limited. But certainly we can be directed to go back and find money. But that will mean cuts to something else. Although our budget that we're receiving money, and so that's why this was a difficult exercise.
Second step in specifically base, due to spending time in ISS, due to lack of respect, do we have any data to back up?
The Access and Opportunity Department was running that. We did a pilot last spring, and the pilot did show that there were positive results. I have not seen the data for this year yet for first semester, but we could get that for you.
All right, thank you so much.
Member Gould?
Thank you. I also would like to see that data just to see what the impact. How big was the pilot?
The pilot was 34 schools. There was actually elementary schools in the pilot, and we decided moving forward, because with the elementary schools, it didn't seem as necessary. Elementary schools have a lot more character education within their
curriculum.
Regular curriculum.
Yeah, regular curriculum. Okay. So it could be less anyway if we were to narrow the scope of where we targeted those programs.
Well, we did not provide it to elementary schools this year, so the 180,000 was just secondary.
I see.
The pilot last spring was 34 schools, but that included elementary.
Okay.
In the pilot.
I know the positions that you have listed here on your chart haven't been able to be filled, but are vacant now.
Yeah, we chose not to fill them until we
knew what this process was. The resource teacher and the licensed mental health counsel training, they are trainers?
Those positions had been full-time trainers, so they had not been assigned to schools. When we had the youth mental health first aid trainings last year and still this fall, we had some full-time trainers because we needed so many. So those were positions where probably if we didn't cut them, we would assign them to schools. But we do need, right now, a lot of our licensed mental health counselors that are assigned to schools also do the youth mental health first aid training. You know, they come out of their schools to do the training.
Right, it's spread thin.
Yeah, it spreads it around.
So is there a community partner that could help replace that? Have we looked at that, that would come along, as an in-kind partner? Have we ever asked?
I think we could look at possibly for the training piece. Embrace Florida had a grant at one point, and they were going to be doing some mental health training for parents for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there was an agency, we could probably have them possibly help us with the training piece.
Mm-hmm.
What we've been finding
or NAMI.
What we've been finding with our partners right now is we've been being provided, let's say with the Winter Park Health Foundation, we have the chill counselors, which are direct services in the schools. We just started with Advent Health, a partnership where they're going to be providing us with some navigators for some of our higher risk students, where we could, kind of wraparound services and everything.
So some of those duties might be able to be spread into those kinds of partnerships.
Yeah.
So it's not a complete loss.
No.
You know, and obviously, Mary, I'd be happy to work with you on any of that with any of the community partners. I am really concerned about cutting or not refilling social work positions. Really, really, really concerned about that, and would like to maybe have you look at that, because I think, especially when we're looking at the success of the students who are most at risk that may be struggling academically, if they don't have that support, I don't know that the software tools can help them, if that makes sense. So that, I know we can't say yes to everything, obviously, but those two positions, that we are so thin in that area that it takes so much time just to, unless it's an extreme crisis, to get support. And the same with our licensed mental health counselors. It's the same problem. They have so many other duties, they don't have enough time to really help the one kid maybe as fully as we would love them to be able to, because you just can't manufacture hours in a day. You just can't. So that is two places that I would like to look at, but especially with the threat response and all of the other duties that are tied to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gould. Member Felder.
Thank you, Chair. I, too, have shared some of the same concerns as Member Gallo, and especially what Member Gould said toward the end of her discussion. And I know the money, it's a serious issue. So my concern is the mental health, because as I share with all of you here, we know that is something that we just cannot bargain with, because we're living in a time and among young people. I don't know if you saw on the news, and I thank God it didn't happen with us, but there was a school bus in Philadelphia. Somebody walked on the bus, shot 6 kids on the bus. So if that's not a mental health situation, I don't know what else is. So I want to know, Ms. Bridges, do community partners, I know when you mentioned Advent Health, I got excited and happy about what Advent Health is doing just in the city. They're building hospitals and centers all over. These schools that find themselves in dire straits in terms of not having enough mental health counselors or people just not being able to be there, Superintendent, would they be able to get like some city grants and, I don't know, just some monies? And I say that because Jared Dimmons came on the TV, I think 2 weeks ago, and said with this money left from pandemic, people's hospital bills, it's going to be paying. And I'm just wondering, we're just at a place, we just have to turn over every crevice, every brook to try to find out, because we need social workers in the schools, and I know I'm talking to the choir. We need mental health counselors, and I would be one of the ones to be in favor of doing all that we can to find the funds. So, Dr. Vasquez, could some schools that may have serious situations more so than others, could they delve in to maybe doing grants? Because the little budgets that schools have, I mean, they don't have a lot of leeway from that.
Interestingly enough, we met yesterday to talk about services for some of our most fragile students that need mental health care. And the alarming fact is that even though there may be money, there aren't the providers. We've talked about partnering. We've talked about trying to outsource some of these services that either we do not have the personnel or that are beyond what we're able to provide. And they're just not there. The people are not there. So we will continue to work with our local partners. We talked about Nemours specifically yesterday, and seeing how we may be able to bridge services for our families. We talked about telehealth, but we're struggling to find the individuals locally and even within the state. But yes, Member Felder, we will continue to look at grant dollars to be able to support additional services for our students.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Member Byrd, do you mind if I take a moment just to respond to this issue as well? It is also something that we laid at the feet of our Mental Health Commission as the primary issue of focus right now. We shared with them, Ms. Bridges and Ms. Becker both shared where we are in terms of the funding that we have, what we are at risk of losing, and asking for their support in seeing which of these gaps they might be able to help fill, and other ways to support our students outside of the traditional social worker or counselor. For instance, bringing a more enriched mentorship program with more of our community partners and corporations, with a training component of it that will help those who step in to mentor our students also understand things they should look for to identify whether the student also needs mental health support services or whether the family needs wraparound services. So, and we have now included on our Mental Health Commission, we had Nemours more at the table to begin with. We now have Orlando Health as well as Advent Health at the table. So, but the superintendent's comments are just dead on. In spite of all the wonderful partners we have, at the end of the day, there are only so many people in this field, and they're not near as enough. And anybody who has any loved ones who are struggling with any mental health issues, you know this to be the case. So just wanted to let you know that our community partners are at the table. Ms. Bridges is doing an excellent job, so is Ms. Becker, so is the whole team, in trying to find the best ways to address a very, very critical issue. So thank you, Member Byrd, for allowing me to interject, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm glad that you said that, because that is really at the heart of it. I wanted to just comment about the base education pass module. I understand the concerns, and especially because this has been a big issue of mine, is what we're doing with those kids while they're in pass. But like this, and also with the math program, I'm a big believer that people are more important in front of our kids than programs. So if we have to cut that program and guarantee that we have the people in our schools that can get in front of those kids and work with them and mentor them, and what the chair was saying, I think that setting up these mentoring programs is really what some of the biggest things we can do to make change for these kids and with their behaviors. And in fact, I think I'd much rather see that than them just sitting in front of a computer doing a module on disrespect. I'd rather them build a relationship with someone that's going to teach them what that means. And we've got some great programs in our schools that are working on this. So I have concerns about, not kind of providing a overall, this is what we want you to do with these kids while they're facing these difficulties, because I want to make sure kids aren't getting missed. But I also feel like where we can put our resources into actual people, it's better. So I'm 100% behind finding the money where we can to hire the people we can hire. And I'm very pleased to see that we're keeping the social workers that we have. I know that at my daughter's school, they, the work they do is just unreal for these kids. It really is. So I'm pleased with that. And there was a program, I know that there's resources out there for like the resiliency with the elementary, and there's some, and maybe you can help me with this, there's some partner that we use for something, and I had a meeting with them and they said, we've got all these materials for teachers on resiliency, and teachers aren't using it because it's not really a program that we necessarily use, but they have all the resources, like free for teachers. And I can't for the life of me now remember who it was.
Harmony, it used to be Sanford Harmony, and now it's just Harmony. And they have that K through 8, and it is approved, and the schools do have that, and it's free of charge. It's similar to the second step.
Okay. So we have resources, and we have things they can.
Yes, we've got the resources. Again, elementary school has a 30-minute health course a week, so they have time built into their schedule where they can do some of these Tier 1 resources. Middle and high school, it gets a little bit more difficult to find the time to do that, and so we try to have them infuse it into their courses.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And as always, I know that this is not easy, but you know how much I appreciate you and your advocacy, so thank you.
Thank you, Member Byrd. Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair. I know to Dr. Vasquez's point on maybe we find the money, but it's really hard to find kind of the staff for it. And Mary, I know you had spent time on looking at some of those platforms like Hazel and some of those, like, how are we thinking about them in the context of this? And maybe we could talk to the board about like what they do, just so I know that they kind of try to solve for some of the supply problems, but yeah.
Yes. So Hazel Health is the telemental health, and we did pilot that in schools this year. The mental health piece parents did not want to provide consent for the telemental health during the school day. They did use Hazel. Again, it was very low numbers, 20, 25 maybe parents who receive the services after school. So I think that they're more, they don't want to drive kids after school to a therapist, so they're okay with the student having telemental health at home. But when it's on the school campus, again, we have the ability to have the face-to-face counselors at this point. So if it was a choice, they would always choose the face-to-face. Our SEDNet, again, we do have 17 agencies that we do refer students to, and all of those agencies do the telemental health. Again, after hours and on weekends and things like that, but they still come in. We ask them to come into the school during the school day when they're helping students. Just first semester, we had 6,828 referrals to our SEDNet counselors or our licensed mental health counselors. So we are seeing students face to face. If we got to the point where we didn't have them, then possibly we'd get more consents for the telemental health, but I think that when they have the choice, they still like the face-to-face. We are looking at Hazel Health, as the superintendent said, for possibly some of our more critical and severe students, so that we can provide them those services if they can't be in a school setting, or if they're out of a school setting for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's several solutions that are trying to do that telehealth approach so that students can talk to someone. And I'm very supportive of continuing to explore this, even if we have the partners, just because, like you said, it can be challenging if a parent has to miss work to drive a student after school to get services versus if a parent has opted in for the service and the student can do it at home. It is a lot more accessible. I think it's always hard to understand if utilization is low because parents don't want to opt in or because parents don't know that this is even an option. And so I would love if we just, I think spent a little bit more time. I've heard good things about these services from other districts. I think they're good complementary to our in-person work. And they seem to increase that accessibility for parents that, cannot be driving their kid to sessions after school on top of work.
Yeah, we will definitely continue to keep using it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Salamanca. Member Gould, I'm sorry. Member Byrd, you already spoke, not again, right? This is just leftover. Thank you. Member Gould.
A couple of follow-ups. I think the county's final budget for the $10 million they were investing in mental health, I think part of that was also to create more mental health counselors. I think they were working with Valencia and UCF on that. It was in the discussion at one point. I think there was an investment in that, but I'm not positive. Or maybe the universities just took it on. I'm not sure. But have we looked at that pathing a little bit more closely with our student population to kind of guide those who would be interested in human services work or social work into more of the mental health pathing? And do we have any academies in that?
I'm not aware that we have any social work or mental health programming. I'm looking at Greg in any of our schools, which is an excellent idea. As we are looking to expand through the pipeline initiative, teachers students within Orange County that would like to pursue a career in education, it could definitely be expanded to look at the area of school counseling as well as some of the therapeutic services. We have reached out to the University of Central Florida, trying to create a stronger partnership for those hard-to-fill positions, the speech therapy, the psychologists, social workers, and they too are finding it very difficult with individuals going into that field, but they are definitely open to ideas that would help increase their enrollment. So that is something that we can definitely look to include as we're expanding our own teacher pipeline within our high schoolers.
So this is kind of backdooring it, but another thing to look at is curriculum design. Because if you're going into teaching, nursing, any of those caregiving, child development, any of those caregiving, there's mental health components when you get to the college level. But maybe we could start to introduce that at the high school level and almost start it internally with our students understanding a little bit more and being a little more knowledgeable in their peer groups about triggers and things that are mental health. If I remember this correctly, and it's not morning, but I feel like it's early morning right now, the way my brain is working. The licensed mental health counselors that we have on campuses are the ones who administer our gifted program too, right? No. Who does that? The psychologists?
No, there's gifted teachers as part of the ESE department. And
Okay, so they're administering the test?
Oh, the psychologists do the gifted testing.
The psychologists do the test, not the class, the test.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought. So I have heard from a couple of our psychologists that they don't have enough time for students because of doing that test. Is there an opportunity for AI to help with the screenings of those tests? Is there an opportunity to deliver those tests in a different way? I don't know. It may be something to look at to give them more bandwidth to spend time with students who may need some more critical needs. Not that we want to ever miss anyone who would be more appropriate in the gifted program, and that's a big wonderful thing we do. But again, we can't manufacture hours.
So our psychologists, they do all of the ESE evaluations for, to have our ESE students be qualified for any ESE services, including the gifted services. And those are IQ tests and all those different tests. And they do, I know, have very strict protocols for all of those of what needs to be done. We could look into that, but I know that they have gone online for a lot of those, so that they have been using technology, but I don't know how much more we could.
I think
free up
that
their
would be
time.
worth a look, especially since technology is changing so fast, and I think will get adopted, particularly in this arena, because there is such a shortage of staff, on what those opportunities might be to give them more time. We can't relieve them of the final review judgment, but what could we, it sounds like you're doing it, but automate more or make more streamlined, just to give them more time in their day. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gould. Member Byrd.
Thank you. As the superintendent was talking about creating pipelines and whatnot for mental health services, I think that's a great idea, and we might also want to explore this and education for our legislative platform next year, because if the state could provide tuition reimbursement incentive for people wanting to go into education fields and mental health fields, that could be a big boost to get people. So I want us to kind of keep that in mind next year for legislative session. And then peer counseling. I know at our conference we were at together last week, there was a student that said in their school in Hillsborough, they do peer counseling a lot, and it's helped when there's a shortage of help for kids. And I'm thinking, obviously not kids that have severe issues that need help, but sometimes kids just need someone to talk to. And we've got a lot of great leaders in our schools, and we've seen that when they come here. Maybe we could look at, as we incorporate some of this knowledge, like what Member Gould was saying, to our kids in high schools, maybe we could look at, part of that could be training them in certain ways to talk to their peers and start some peer counseling groups in our high schools, or have them available for kids when they need someone to talk to. Because I think that could be really, really helpful. I think some kids would really enjoy just talking to another kid that's maybe struggled and has gotten through it and how they did it, or maybe give them ideas on what they do to deal with their stress, or, stuff like that. And who knows, maybe that'll inspire some of them to continue to help people when they get older. So I'd like for us to kind of explore that a little more too. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Byrd. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Do we still screen all of our second graders for gifted?
Yes, we still have the second, yes.
Does, and that has to be done by the psychologist?
The screener, it doesn't, it's just,
Okay,
once
staffing
they're
specialists
screened,
can do
once
the-
they're screened, if they have a certain threshold, then they have the complete test.
Okay, so the psychologist doesn't come in until they pass that screening?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and then I loved where Member Gould and Member Byrd were going when we look at like our college and career readiness and our resources that we have in our high school. When we talk to a lot of times students, like I talk to students all the time, I'm like, where are you going to school? What do you want to be? And the majority of them don't know, which is fine. You're a junior or senior, you don't have to know. But do we give out like lists, like these are the jobs that are high need that you could, if you're interested, you could go and you could get, and you'd probably immediately get a job, hopefully with a living wage. Because I know, like, my kids struggled. Like neither one of my kids knew what to do. One of them went into political science. She's doing fabulous. My other one went into sports management because I I didn't want her to go into education. And now she's subbing. But, and now I'm thrilled. But it just, I guess my point is are we just kind of helping kids know what's available in the marketplace, what the needs in the marketplace are as they're trying to determine what they want to be? Because if they don't know there's a true need for this and they're interested in it, maybe they struggle to, and you've got to declare early now when you apply for college, like when you, on your entrance, you've got to tell them what you want to be. So I just didn't know if that's something that we have in our college and career centers where we kind of talk about that and say, hey, these are really needed in a shortage right now.
Yes, so we have 8th grade, there is a college and career program in the 8th grade social studies course where they have 6 days in the fall and 4 days in the spring where they do college and career. They have them taking surveys and things. We're transitioning to a new program that the state has called Zello, which is an online one. We've had online ones in the past, Naviance and Score, but that online one does show, you put in your zip code, you put in your area, and there's things they can work on. We do train our college and career specialists in the high schools on all of the most current, and all of our counselors on the most current needs. They work a lot with CTE in having sessions and kids that are going to the college and career center. We can always do more and look at doing more to get that out to the kids.
Thank you so much. And thanks for all the work that you do.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next. Before we do, let me just very quickly, though, take a moment to thank the board for their priority on this. One of the things I have loved from the very first day I joined this board was seeing how aligned we all are on the whole child, and not just the academic performance. Academic performance is extremely important, but it doesn't happen without our children being fully supported, being emotionally strong and sound and resilient. And I think there are a lot of people who could sit on a board like this and lose sight of that entirely. So it's always just such an honor and a joy to serve with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Next, Kim Gilbert, Senior Director of Federal Program, will present other initiatives.
Good afternoon. Utilizing Edgenuity, students are provided face-to-face support and instruction from certified teachers. This provides students the opportunity to make up lost credits due to poor grades. In the 22-23 school year, 23,750 students completed courses for credit. Prior to the pandemic, the district provided 18 staff. Due to an increase in need, currently there are 55 staff members. Successful completion of a credit recovery course generates FEFP revenue to offset the costs. This item is cost neutral. Assistant principals. 36 Title I schools were provided an assistant principal with Esser funds. The district provided an additional 22 assistant principals for non-Title I schools. If the district does not fund this initiative, it will affect 58 schools due to equity. Targeted schools do not generate an AP based on school size of less than 657 students. Of the 58 APs, 22 are currently allocated in the general fund. The fiscal impact of the 36 assistant principals is $3.35 million. Algebra 1, high school, smaller class size. Utilizing Esser funds, the district is supporting a pilot program in 14 schools. Class size has been decreased from 24 students to approximately 16. The district is currently collecting data to support this request. The original pilot will be continued with Title I and Title II funding. This results in no impact to the general fund.
Vice Chair.
I'm sorry, we're having Fungate up here. It's funny. Okay, I do have a couple of questions. Edgenuity. So prior to the pandemic, we were operating on 18 staff, and now it's gone up to 65, or 55, excuse me, staff members. And I understand that our FEFP revenue to offset costs. So this cost is neutral because more students are graduating, so we get the funds from that. So I understand how that works. I continue to have concerns around this program, being that, And I'm not talking about the students that are literally struggling and doing their very best and are just falling a little bit short. Those kids absolutely need our more resources so that we can kind of get them over that fence. I'm concerned that students have been able to figure out that they don't have to show up for class, that they don't have to do the work in class, and then in 6 weeks over the summer, they can take the course and pass the class. And I think as we found out over the pandemic with online learning, and as we continue to figure out ways to curb cheating virtually with Florida Virtual School and even our own virtual school, I worry about taking a class online and not, I'm just worried, are we giving that student the highest possible education that they deserve? Are we really preparing them for the workforce as our strategic plan says that we need to do? Like, are we following our strategic plan when we do this? Because I could give you examples of kids on Florida Virtual who are not learning the content and they're passing the classes. And so I worry about ingenuity. And the fact that it's gone up to the need of 55 teachers tells me that more and more kids aren't passing those classes or wanting to be in school and then for taking the classes online. So I don't know. I'm not really asking a question. I'm just kind of more stating my concern for that. And I think one dovetails the other. If we really want to look at chronic absenteeism and we want people to remain in class and have their rear ends in their seats in class, we've got to change some things. And one of the things we've got to change is we can't make it so easy for them not to be there. So that's just and again, I'm not talking about the kids that are doing everything they can and they just need that little extra step. I'm talking about the kids that are kind of taking advantage of this. And then the assistant principals, I just want to say I'm in 100% support of assistant principals. I know that the price tag on that is like $3.35 million, but I haven't talked to a principal yet that it wasn't a recipient of a principal due to Esser dollars that wasn't extremely thankful for it and really needed it. I haven't talked to one principal that said, hey, can you do your job with an out of AP? And they said yes. Not one of them. Like, not one of them said that to me. Like, their jobs and what their jobs entail with the increase in discipline, with the chronic absenteeism, with the evaluation of their teachers. Even if you have a school of 550, it's impossible to be one person and to do it. And then if you get a dean, because a dean costs less money than assistant principal, then the dean's being overworked and really doing the AP's job for less money, and that's really not fair to the dean. So I'm just in 100,000% in support of doing what we need to do to make sure that our teachers, our principals, have the AP that they need. And then with the algebra, there was a literacy pilot up in Marietta, Georgia that I talked about when we were talking about literacy, where they did a 10-to-1 ratio of instruction with science of the reading, and the scores and the impact that they had was tremendous. So if we could do a smaller class pilot and look at the data and see how those numbers grow, I'm 100% for that, because I think that we will see a huge spike in the percentage of students that are able to pass that Algebra 1 EOC test. So thank you.
Member Gould.
So I think Angie was in my head. So thank you about the assistant principals and how hard you work to make sure that we can preserve those. Actually, this is for Mr. Moody. Or it may be for both of you, I don't know, or the superintendent. I get the credit recovery, and you and I have talked about what a fan I am of how we implement credit recovery sometimes, because we do the same thing multiple times, just in a different pathway delivery. Would money like this, in your opinion, and I'm going to put you on the spot, or with additional funds, because we get full payment for the students, be better spent in workforce programs like we have at Universal? Because it engages the kids and brings them back into the classroom. and gives them relevancy. I mean, we've seen that time and time again as we try to duplicate that program throughout here. And I know that's kind of an unfair question, but I know there has to be some place, sorry, I'm going on, some place for the virtual to fit in, but I think we use that more than we use these programs that have 100% or close to it every year graduation rate and turns kids' lives around and really gives them purpose and pathway in a way that sitting at a computer and doing a credit recovery cannot. So thoughts on expansion of that or the ability, and is there a way to start to transition some of these dollars?
And I don't think Rose is here, but you can add on if I miss anything. We, at a previous meeting, the board had spoken about integrating some of the skills into some of the courses that are being offered through CTE, and we have started the wheels in motion to look at summer writing teams that will be able to incorporate that into those courses. Currently, that is not something that they are doing, nor does CTE have the staff to do that. The issue of student engagement is so big, and it's while we would love to be able to say individually that some of these things have contributed to our drop, the jury is still out on exactly what is having the greatest impact. It's certainly the attention that it has received nationally. I just finished reading a brief from Hanover that outlines districts that have had a large decrease in their rate of attendance. Much of that, if not all of it, is tied to building relationships and how they do that, as well as creating a culture at their schools where children want to be there, families feel connected. Saying it and creating it are two very different things and require additional work and support. So certainly looking at opportunities by reviewing data of students that are chronically absent, that are not doing well in school, and seeing if we can't provide guidance through our school counselors on, let's try this course, or let's take a look at these certification programs where you may find more interest, and then they do start to attend school. It's part of the big picture of what we're trying to do to create those schools where children feel safe, supported, and successful. A word about Edgenuity. We're bringing to the board our policy on attendance, and we're having conversations about possibly changing requirements or how you're able to take Edgenuity as far as days missed versus it's an automatic. So an example could be that a child that misses X number of days by the end of the first semester would have to take the class over. It would not be an automatic that they would go into Edgenuity. Or looking at the total number of days missed, that would trigger, or the circumstances behind it. We do have some children that are medically fragile or who have had unforeseen circumstances that would be an exception to the rule of what we are seeing. Additionally, I think the messaging to our teachers about accepting the work, we have to push on that, because I continue to hear that they feel pressured to have to accept the work even though the child hasn't attended school at all. Who's done the work? Have they really demonstrated that knowledge and expertise? So we're looking into all of that. It will not be clean, it will not be easy, and it will take us some time to be able to analyze what truly is having an impact on our student engagement, which connects to graduation rates and attendance rates.
So follow up, superintendent. So, and I think all of that is great and it's the right track, but on these kids that are perpetually out of school, have we introduced and CTE is a fantastic option, but if they've disengaged, that may be too far, but a program like the one we have at Universal with the work study is, one, they get a mentor, because whatever industry we're going with, we've now put a adult in that child's life. And time and again, every time, and I've visited that school, I think 3 times now, every single time, the one fluid thing that each child says to me is, I was not comfortable at my school and I would have dropped out. And the work study made everything relevant. And have either gone on to career pathing in a certification or have decided to go on to college now. So how do we maybe screen the kids that are taking the easy way out and just don't want to get out of bed and can do the work versus those that are truly not comfortable at their high school or in that environment and need that more interactive, engaging kind of a broken up work day or school day?
Our staff can look at that. And Mr. Moody, clarify for me, don't we have also an issue with capacity? Like we would have to expand program capacity.
We don't have enough sites.
That is correct. We would have to expand program capacity, which I'm always looking out to do. So if, Madam Chair, if I can comment. So Member Gould, you and Gallo, you bring up some interesting points and a lot of good questions about, so I think if you look at our chronic absentee rate, or failure rate, or number of students that are in Edgenuity, all in COVID, right? It all happened at the same time, almost a perfect storm, for lack of a better phrase. So the questions that I still have are, why are our kids still chronically absent, right? We've got to determine why they're absent. Is it because Edgenuity is much easier? I don't know. We'll find out maybe on the survey that we're putting out. That is one of the questions that I have is, do you fail, do you not come to school because you think course recovery, Edgenuity, is much simpler? We'll see how they respond and I'll report out. But I also think that a lot of more research is needed within OCPS, and my plan is to take a deeper dive into our chronically absent students that we have this year. What is their GPA? How many courses have they failed? Are they in Edgenuity now, right? Are they taking course recovery now? And many of the other questions that you asked in my last strategic plan briefing on chronic absenteeism. One of them was homelessness, and the other one was, reading levels, and also put in there retained. How many kids were retained? How many were retained in 3rd grade or K1, right? Early on, early literacy, as we look at early literacy. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to learn more about why kids are chronically absent. Are they disengaged in school? Could be, a big part of it. We see that all the time in my alternative ed centers, right? Kids that, for one reason or another, did not fit in a traditional setting. So we take them and we take care of them and we get them through graduation at our alternative centers and our school choice options, and gladly do so. So I think a lot more is, and also looking at policy, right? Superintendent talked about policy, bringing policy, your attendance policy back to the board and brainstorming what can we put in place, if anything, that would encourage kids to come in school. Is that the answer? We'll survey other districts to see what their policy and seat time are. Do they require a certain number of seat times? Or if you miss so many days of school, you automatically fail the course or fail the semester? We're surveying districts now to get that information, and we'll bring that back to the board for an informed decision when the time is right. But yeah, look forward to the opportunity to learn more about these chronically absent students.
And aren't we doing an expansion of that work study program? Weren't you looking into, wasn't it with a,
So we're always
was it
looking.
Cisco?
We were looking with a local pharmacy
Pharmacy, that's right.
in town,
I was close. Food.
local pharmacy, and we're
Pharmacy.
also looking at a hotel
Okay,
for
fantastic.
to team up.
Yeah.
So on-site, I think, full immersion like the Universal Ed and our Randall Academies, that full
Yeah.
immersion, having school
full-
on-site is
Exactly,
key.
like at Universal Studios. If you all haven't been to one of those programs yet, I highly, highly recommend it because there's many students in your districts that would benefit from those opportunities, and you all have industries that could partner. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Member Gould. Member Farrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to, so just a quick question that I have for the Algebra 1. Is this only for Title I schools, or are we using Title I and Title II funding?
So currently, we have a pilot in 15 schools. The 5 Title I schools are a part of that pilot, plus 10 other schools, and we will continue with those same schools next year, utilizing Title I and Title II funding.
Okay, perfect. I love the idea of having a pilot for this because I do feel that having those smaller class sizes, especially for the Algebra 1, if you're taking Algebra 1 in high school, it is usually, as we've discussed previously, because kids are struggling and need that a little more one-on-one. So I love it. I love that idea. Also really in favor of making sure that our assistant principals are staying in the elementary schools. That is, every school that I have visited, every single principal has been adamantly thankful for having that ability to have an assistant principal. And I think just it's been incredible from what I've seen. As far as the Edgenuity, I'm really thank you, Dr. Vasquez, for what you said and how you're looking into this and really wanting to do a deeper dive into seeing what exactly is the reasoning, and then how can we make sure that we're not having kids who, as has been stated, are just missing and going, I can make that up quick in 6 weeks. Because as we know, the 9 months of school versus 6 weeks in a class may not be the same type of education. When we discuss Edgenuity, currently, are you able to explain maybe a little more on, I know it's saying that we wouldn't have that, we're offsetting the expense and whatnot, but what exactly is it covering? Is it covering just the teachers? Is it covering, can you explain a little more?
Yes. So the nearly $5 million, I think, is just for teachers. There is a software fee that is coming up for, I think, RFP coming up soon, next year or two. That is another, I think, Ernest, do you remember how much we pay? Almost $1 million? Just north of 900,000 for software. So a bulk of that is people.
Okay, and the software is what is needed for them to be able to
get
a hold of that.
That is
virtually.
Edgenuity.
And that lasts for a period of years?
That is a 3. Yeah, we're on a 3-year contract, but the annual cost is about $900,000.
Okay. Do we know how many students are currently taking Edgenuity?
I do, yes. So for this current school year, we have 7,523 students enrolled. That means, that's students. We have 16,587 enrollments, what we call enrollments. That means, obviously, if we have 7,000 kids, 7,500 kids, some of the kids are taking actually 2 classes or more, right? So that's what we call enrollments. That's enrollments into a course. And then we have, so far this year, we have 10,665 completions. And that's for middle and high schools.
Okay. Just trying to see how that all works out. But okay, thank you so much.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Farrant. Member Kester-Denel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to also weigh in on the assistant principals. I'm glad that we're prioritizing them because simply the workload of the principals has increased, as we've heard from OCASA and Mr. Swenson. And we also are always looking for principals, and this is how we train principals. So this does help us to offset that that workforce that we're always trying to develop. And also, I keep up with the enrollment summaries that we get every month, and I look at how many of our schools have less than 600 students, and there are so many that are just hovering, and they would not be getting these assistant principals if we didn't have this initiative. And I know that one of my schools in particular, if we were to remove an assistant principal, it would stop our momentum in a school where we're really working hard to turn it around. So I appreciate that we're making this a priority. As for the chronic absenteeism, that's a whole dissertation of research and looking into that. And there are so many external factors as to why students aren't coming to school. It isn't just what we offer or don't offer. There's family issues, there's the economy, there's homelessness, there's transients, they're going from one county to another county. We lose track of them sometimes. So there's so much involved in that. So that will take a while to really understand fully. But I think for our district, what we need to address it is just to be innovative and make sure that we have the flexibility from the state to offer those creative programs, and how we address our credits, and maybe even going back to something old school like just co-op, where they come to school for 4 hours, 4 classes, and then leave and go work and get credit for those electives. Just keeping it simple might help as well. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Member Castrodell. We are, in just a moment, we're going to take a break for lunch. I apologize for the little bit of noise up here. It seemed like we were all getting hungry at the same time, so lunch arrived just in time. Before I do that, I do have one question. And as we are going through this, I'm not sure when we'll be, and this is probably for the superintendent, when we'll be at the point with the state's budget where we'll have a handle on what that means to us in this upcoming year and how that will factor into ultimately making these decisions.
I'm going to ask Ms. Concolino to step up in response. She and her team have already started to dig deep into it.
Thank you. I did not see you hiding back there, so I thought I didn't want to put anybody in the spot, but I thought you'd be the only person that could probably answer that. So, yeah, not looking for like an update right now, because I know you're just having a chance to get your head around that. But thoughts on the timeline?
Well, I mean, I have some very general comments now, nothing real specific. I do believe there is an increase in funding.
Hey.
The BSA increased by $191.25, which is 3.7%. If you break that down into a per pupil, it's about 3% for Orange County for traditional students. However, we are experiencing declining enrollment, so you've got to weigh the two. So again, very general, I think maybe about 2.7%.
And we made a commitment for salaries that was based on growth in our funding. So I know you'll have to take all of that into consideration as well. So, and I should know this, but when does the governor hasn't signed the budget, right?
No, it dropped on Tuesday, and
Okay.
then there's a 72-hour period.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't know when he'll actually sign it, but I
Okay.
believe if there's no objections within the legislature, where's Scott when I need him? I believe that then Friday.
Okay. Okay. So, Dr. Vasquez, before this comes back for final decisions, I'm assuming we'll have a full handle on the budgetary implications or the implications on us of this budget. Would that be correct?
I would, well, 2 points. Depending on where we land, I don't know that it would come back to the board. We absolutely could, but our intent was to gather your feedback before we close out today's work session. We'll make sure that we review to make sure we have all of your points, and then we would take that information and build it into the budget, and we could then share that with the board if there's any items that we are not able to incorporate into our budget. But it seems clear thus far that you don't want to cut anything.
Yeah.
But that there is priority on people, and that if we're able to, for some of these, one or two that we have not been able to find full funding, that if dollars are available, for example, the IXL, that we would then expand it to what it was through the Esser funding.
All right, thank you. And you may have covered that process, and I missed it or wasn't paying attention. For some reason, I was thinking that we were going to take a final vote on all of this, and then you were going to do the budget. But what you just said makes so much more sense. So thanks for clarifying that.
It's part of my ending remarks. I didn't realize that we were going to stop through the presentation for questions, or else I would have stated it at the beginning. So yes, but we are here to serve at the pleasure of the board. If you want it to come back, we certainly can do that.
Okay, well, we can discuss that at the end, but what you just described to me makes a lot more sense, to see the whole budget inclusive of the input you've received from the board. So anyway, if the board, like I said, we can discuss it at the end, but unless other board members have an issue with that, I think that's an excellent strategy. All right, so we will take a recess for lunch and be back here at, can I have a recommendation? 1:30. 1:30? Really? All right, let's give it a shot.
Okay, let's go.
On an over, whatever that thing is, I bet you're wrong, but we'll give it a shot. I know, it's 24 minutes. Go. right, welcome back, everyone. We are going to pick up where we left off. And I see that Ms. Beckler is at the podium. Dr. Vasquez, do you have anything that we need to address before? Okay. Ms. Beckler, you're up.
Thank you. So at this point, I will now turn this over to Dr. Ian Gazantai, Principal Leader with Exceptional Student Education.
Let me say one thing. It could be my ears, but I'm having a hard time hearing our speakers. And I don't think it's you all. I think if we could, and my room volume says almost all the way to the top. So if there's anybody in the back that can help us a little bit, that'd be great. All right.
Good.
Mr. Gazantai, welcome, sir.
Thank you. In June of 2021, an internal audit of the different areas of the ESC department were conducted to review efficiency and concerns. One of the areas reviewed was that of the individual education plan process. It revealed that school staffing specialists indicated that they were overwhelmed with the duties required to complete their assignments and that the processes were tedious, time-consuming, and redundant. To help address this issue, OCPS funded staffing specialists and clerk positions out of Esser. Prior to the funding of the additional staff, 50% of state complaints filed by parents were a result of a procedural violation. For the school year 2022-2023, with the addition of staffing specialists and clerks through Esser, only 20% of state complaints filed had a procedural violation. Due to the additional staff, the number of state complaints filed that resulted in procedural violations decreased by 30%, from 50% resulting in violations in 2021-2022 to 20% resulting in violations this past school year. Prior to funding these positions out of Esser, 41% of state complaints were resolved successfully. After the addition of staffing and clerical positions for school year 2023, 68% of state complaints were resolved successfully. For this school year, there are 16 state complaints filed. 6 of these state complaints are still pending. Of the other 10 state complaints, 4 were resolved successfully between the school district and the parent with no violations found. 3 were dismissed by the Bureau with no violations. And 3 were withdrawn by the parent. At this time, we have no procedural violations. In the school year 2021-2022, only 70% of staffing specialists remained in their position for school year 22-2023. 78% of staffing specialists remain in their position, and currently we stand at 80.5% have remained in their position this year. In addition, the student achievement gap between students with disabilities and those with no disabilities closed by 6 percentage points in ELA and 1 percentage point in math during the same period of time. Since the inception of Esser funds to hire extra staffing specialists and clerks seems to have a positive impact on the significant drop of procedural violations, an increase in resolutions of state complaints, staffing specialist retention improvement, and on closing the student gap, the current plan is to continue to fund the staffing specialist and school clerk positions for school year 2025. The fiscal impact of this plan is $8 million.
Okay, can we pause there? Member Byrd.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this update. And I just wanted to chime in to, well, I have one question. You said this year there's only 16 state complaints, and I see that everything's gone down. And I was looking in the text. Did you say in previous years what the number of state complaints were?
I didn't say the number,
You
but
said a
I
percentage.
could get you that though. But we did say
It's gone down. It's gone down, basically,
Yes,
right?
it
Okay.
has.
I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate your team, congratulate Wendy on everything you have done with our ESC department. I think these numbers just speak for themselves. Holy moly. I mean, really, and especially at this time, we have no procedural violations. all of the way, even the way these complaints are being handled and resolved, it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal work, and I'm thrilled that the district, that you all want to continue this. I'm in full support of continuing, keeping the staff that you have. As we've said many times, our ESC population is just going to continue to grow, as we keep seeing year after year, for whatever reason. So I think the more support that we can provide to our schools, the better. So great job. Congratulations, and thank you so much for all of your hard work. We appreciate it.
Member Byrd. Darn, you stole my... So my question when I saw this, although I know that the number of people we have in these positions makes a difference, but Ms. Ivory, when did you take on your current responsibility? What year?
The beginning of last school year.
So 22, 23?
Yes, yes.
So while, again, I'm not suggesting we change course in terms of the personnel, but I do think that your leadership has had a pretty profound impact as well. And your style. I just echo everything that Member Byrd said. I think there's more to this than the numbers of people that we have in place. It's not just the number of chairs you fill on the bus. It's making sure the right people on the right seats. And so to the superintendent, kudos to you for making a very wise decision. I think you got a great team.
Yes, we do have a great team.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, Member Farran.
Thank you. I too will echo that. Ms. Ivory, you are phenomenal. You're fantastic to work with. Your leadership is just, it shows for itself. And I think you had a great point, Madam Chair, that I definitely think having these staffing specialists and the clerks in their positions, that is probably part of what happened to make these numbers go down, but also your leadership and making sure you have the right staffing specialists in each school and taking a look at every area and aspect. So absolutely amazing on that. The one question I had is, do we get the funding that we get from the state, is there specific funding, I don't remember, for ESE, or is it just sort of included in the, how does that work?
It's called weighted FTE. So for depending on the student matrix, there's an extra percentage of the funding that would go towards the ESE student. So depending on the need of support.
Okay.
So there's a matrix that each student gets, and there's 5 different areas where the students get kind of valued in regards to what level of support they need. So depending on the support in each different area, it adds up to a number, and that number helps determine what matrix level.
Okay, and so it is based on the number of students, not necessarily just here's an allotted amount for your district.
Yeah, it's based on their need. And the matrix, it, like Ian was saying, has specific funding numbers tied to it. So if you have a student that has speech and language, OT, PT, all of that, occupational therapy and physical therapy, all that goes on the matrix, and it bumps the funding up or down based on whatever their needs are.
Okay, perfect. That was my biggest concern. I just wanted to make sure we're getting, if not, we needed to just go and advocate a little more at the state level, but I appreciate that. Thank
Member Farran, one other thing you might find useful, the board asked for an audit of our ESC function throughout the district because there were a number of parents who felt that the dollars that were being allocated from the state weren't ending up helping the students and were just being lost in our budget. And so our independent auditor, Linda Lindsay, audited that. And so we'll be happy to send it to you, but it's on her website. Very, very helpful in tracking the fact that the dollars not only are going to our students, but our general revenue dollars are also going to those students. So I know for board members, it put our minds at ease that we weren't just doing what we needed to do by the letter of the law, but even more than that, to help these students out.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Madam. I can't think today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam?
I know.
Let's go with something more than madam.
I know. I was going to call you Madam President.
Okay.
And I was like, that's not right.
There you go.
I was gonna give you a little boost. The $8 million, how many positions does that pay for?
I mean, total off rough, it's about, it wasn't funded like per position, but if you count the bits and pieces, about total of 50 staffing specialist positions and about 103 clerks.
Okay. We've definitely seen a difference, like in the IEP process, because I used to spend a lot of time on emails and talking to parents who were upset with our IEPs and our IEP process. And I still get a few emails here and there, but it pales in comparison as what I was getting 2 years ago. So kudos to you and Miss Ivory for your hard work. And I know that she works hard and she's always accessible, and she's accessible to the parents of our community, because I know anytime I call her, she's like, just give them my phone number, I'll talk to them. And she follows through. So we really appreciate that. I appreciate all the hard work that you guys have done in ESE. And I know that Mrs. Ivory's been very innovative in trying to fill the gaps, because this is wonderful, but y'all are working really hard, because we still have a lack of ESE teachers. We still have a lack of resources. We're still struggling to provide resources to the students that needs them due to lack of human capital in those positions to do so. So I know that you guys have to get very creative, and at times it's very frustrating to do what we need to do for students when you can't find the personnel to do it. So I commend you for all of that. I would like to, not now, of course, but talk more about what we do for our gifted students, because I'm starting to get questions. It seems like if I call about a child with a unique ability, I can pretty quickly get them the help they need. But if like a gifted child is bored or not getting the resources that they need to be challenged, depending on the school, that's a little bit more difficult. And I know I called Mrs. Ivory recently, and she was super supportive, and that, I believe, is all getting worked out. But just, making sure that we don't lose sight of our top tier as we really work to build up our ones that need it the most. Thank you.
Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo the great job that I think since joining this board I've seen my own district in terms of ESE parents reaching out to me really significantly decrease. And every time I have had a parent reach out or something that I bring up to Wendy and team, it gets handled so quickly, and there's just the level of responsiveness that parents are very grateful for. So thank you for that work that you've done. And to Dr. Vasquez, because I know this has been a top priority for her, and we could just tell the difference, and I think our parents can tell the difference. So just thank you for that. I think it's making a real difference. And also to echo Member Gallo's thing, I think some parents that I get that do have the AP students or the gifted students are now having some issues just getting some of that attention. I understand we have limited resources, but the most we can do to work with our schools to make sure that these students are also kind of not getting the attention that they need, because these students can easily turn into issues if they are not engaged as well. And so while they are on great tracks and engaged, let's keep them there. That would be amazing. So thank you all.
Thank you, Member Salamanca. One final note on this, because while these numbers look great and we've seen such an improvement in customer service and in complaints, I don't want anybody who is tuning into this to think that we are satisfied with where our students are academically. To be honest with you, I don't think we will ever be satisfied, and frankly, in this arena, we shouldn't be satisfied. We should always be pushing ourselves harder to do the best we can. So to those parents, like I said, that might tune in, this is good news. But we never stop pushing as hard as we can to figure out the best way to meet the needs of every one of our students. Thank you very much. Anything else, or are we moving on to Mr. Border?
Okay. I'd like now turn it over to the Chief of Division of Strategy, Dr. Harold Border.
All right. Mr. Gesundheit, thank you, as always, for all your support in this arena.
All right, good afternoon. Moving forward, the ACT non-college reportable exam will be administered to our 12th grade students as it was prior to Esser funding. This shift would result in no fiscal impact to the general fund. We've utilized Esser funding to also administer the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test for our 9th grade students. The change in fee structure for the exam by College Board will allow us to utilize existing funding to continue this administration for our 9th grade students. There will be no fiscal impact to the general fund for PSAT and MSQT.
Wow. No questions. No
All right,
comment.
I will turn.
Nobody has any idea what you're talking about.
I will now turn it over to our Chief Facilities Officer, Rory Salamine.
Don't engage. Don't make eye contact. You guys are fools.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr.
ESSER funds were used to provide water bottle fillers at select locations on each campus. 5 water bottle fillers have been provided at each high school, 3 at each middle and K-8 school, and 2 at each elementary school. The fillers utilize filters that are replaced annually at a cost of $60,000 per year, which has also been funded with ESSER funds. Although our drinking water is safe, filtration improves the taste, and the use of bottle fillers avoids potential hygiene concerns associated with water fountains. Future filter replacements will be funded by the general fund at a cost of $60,000 per year. This concludes my portion of the presentation.
All right,
Unless there are any
I have one
questions.
question for you. Can you say water bottle filler filters 5 times fast? No.
Water bottle filler filters, water bottle filters.
Okay. Any questions? No. Very good.
Okay, I'll turn the presentation over to Chief of Staff, Rob Bixler.
Career Fair Plus is the job platform. Unlike other virtual meeting platforms like Teams or WebEx, this application is specifically designed for virtual job fairs. The application allows multiple candidates and interviewers to schedule one-on-one appointments. Candidates can attach resumes, references, and contact information in preparation for an interview. If approved, the fiscal impact to the general fund would be $58,000. Our current exit interview product is the National Business Research Institute. We have decided not to seek funding for this product and instead we'll work to leverage our partnership with Thought Exchange. There will be no fiscal impact to the general budget.
Okay. We have a question. I'm sorry. Can we pause here?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Question from Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we do our exit interviews, in my opinion, are extremely important because it gives us information that's needed, especially if someone is leaving Orange County for another county, but not necessarily leaving the teaching profession. I think we need to do it even if one teacher decides to leave one school and go to another school, because I think that can give us insight to the climate of one school versus another. Can the Thought Exchange platform, can it do what National Business Research Institute does? Like, is it comparable in those exit interviews?
We have a unique opportunity, honestly, meeting with Dr. Border, and you want to speak to it, but I know that they're beta testing it, so we actually get to create it from scratch.
With Thought Exchange?
With Thought Exchange.
And have you beta tested it?
We will be.
I'd love to hear more about this.
So, Ms. Gallo, we're currently working with procurement. We currently use Thought Exchange, as you've seen. However, they have expanded their platform to surveys next year, and they also have an artificial intelligence interview feature that is in beta testing that will be ready for rollout this summer. So we've gotten to preview that, and we see some potential uses for that. Mr. Bixler was able to be part of that as well, and we believe this could be part of what we do for exit interviews. But we could currently use Thought Exchange as well as part of that process as well. But we are excited about that artificial intelligence interview part of Thought Exchange, which if procurement is able to work through that contract would be part of what the services we would have available.
That's wonderful. Do we have the data? Did we collect the data from the National Business Research Institute? Do we have the data on why teachers were leaving?
We have the data from school year 22-23, and then we'll get a report at the end of this school year for 23-24.
Are you seeing similarities between the 2 years?
It's the trends that you would
expect
that we've talked about.
And
pay, leadership, but all the things that we've been addressing through our smaller cadres. So all the things that came out of last year, we've been addressing here with the board and through the superintendent's reorganization.
Great. I look forward to hearing about or looking at the data at the end of the year. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. I was just going to have one question. I was going to channel Member Gould and ask about AI, whether that had been considered. But you already, you beat us to the punch. So, Member Ferrant.
Just a quick question with the Career Fair Plus. This is not for our students?
No, Career Fair Plus is a platform. Many of the colleges and universities use that to promote job opportunities. And so we're leveraging our partnership with Career Fair Plus nationally, and colleges across the nation can log in and see what vacancies we have or job fairs we have, and have national job fairs that our principals, we can schedule for recruiting and doing interviews.
Perfect. Okay. That's what I thought, but then I double thought that. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, back to you.
One of our top priorities this year as we prepare for the new hiring season is to continue finding ways to reduce our time to fill rates. Maintaining the additional manager and employment coordinator for administrative hiring will continue to expedite the processing of applications, review of candidate screenings, facilitation of the interview process, facilitation of candidate offers, creating board agenda packets, and setting up employees in the SAP system. With the positions, the time to fill process has improved. Since these positions have been in place, the time to fill rate has decreased from 56 days in school year 22-23 to 43 days during this school year. The national average based on the Society for Human Resource Management is 44 days. If approved, the fiscal impact to the general fund would be $125,000.
I have one question. When you say the fiscal impact is $125,000, can you explain to me how you came up with that figure?
It's the cost of the manager and the cost of the coordinator. Those are the two positions that are currently funded from Esser.
Okay. I'm okay. On the other side, by reducing the fill rate, that time it takes. When we have openings, are we using substitutes, and is that at a higher cost? I'm just wondering if there's a cost saving on the other side, or perhaps the opposite. Obviously, if a position's open and nobody's in it, we save money. That's not a saving. I think we should count as a saving. But is there any cost saving by filling the position sooner?
Well, so part of what we've heard through our feedback from administrators and support staff is that one of the concerns they have is the speed in which we can offer a candidate a position before they take a job somewhere else, surrounding counties. And so that has been one of the challenges from Dr. Vasquez to me is to continue to find ways. While 44 days sounds great, I'd like to get it way below that. And so I'm not sure that there's a cost savings by having a substitute filling in a classroom or not. It's we don't want to lose candidates to somebody else who can hire them faster. And so what we're trying to do is through unique ways, with positions obviously is one of them, but finding other ways to also look at our process from beginning to the end, and where can we save a day here, a day there, a day here, and ultimately drive that 44 days down to maybe 30 days. But this is one avenue that we've struggled with, is this simply the time to fill. There are instances, when I've looked at the data, there are some instances where it's taken 50 days, 60 days, 65 days, just because of the processing and the amount of work on the team. And so this has proven through the data to be very beneficial in this area.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't doubt that at all. And when we're looking at fields where there's a shortage to begin with, losing people,
correct,
good people, because we can't get them on board quick enough, is a really bad situation to be in. I just thought that there might also possibly be a fiscal savings by filling the position. I know that there's I want to say intrinsic, but a real value in filling them. But probably not the case when you wash out all those numbers. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does.
All right.
I will now turn it over to Maurice Dragon, our
wonderful.
Chief Information Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Bixler. Oh, did somebody put it down or up? Up. Already? Okay, well, I'm sorry. I heard it and I looked away and I thought it looked like it. No, I thought it looked shorter when I looked back. And so I thought somebody was playing a joke on him. But I realized it didn't get shorter because you're taller. It still looks shorter even though it's taller.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I think between the superintendent and me and vice chair and half the board, that podium was downsized for all of us.
That's all right. It's a good height. So, good morning. The
Good
ITS.
afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
It's okay.
Sorry,
It's only
you're
2
right.
o'clock.
Good afternoon. The ITS team reviewed access to OCPS resources by students with district-provided hotspots after school hours. Based on usage data, we are transitioning to the free T-Mobile $10 million grant for after our current contract ends. The $600,000 cost listed allows us to fulfill our existing contractual obligations with T-Mobile. OCPS will receive 2,500 hotspots for students who qualify for free/reduced lunch with the T-Mobile $10 million grant. The hotspots are available for up to 5 years. The T-Mobile $10 million project offers a sustainable solution for providing our students with internet access beyond school hours.
We have a question from Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I have a question. Do we have a lot of kids like K through 2 that take the hotspots home? Because most of my elementary schools don't allow them to take their device home. It's only for school.
I looked at the data that we have available and I did some comparison. Now, it was mainly at middle and high schools because although we have the hotspots checked out to students, we don't have a direct way of comparing hotspots that are checked out to students to those hotspots being used at home. So I did some research around that, mainly for middle and high schools, but I would need to go and do the same for elementary, to be honest with you.
Okay, because even like look through K through 5 and see how many schools are really allowing them to take their device home. I would imagine maybe 4th and 5th would be more.
Mm-hmm.
But K through 2, they use them in class. And so maybe there's just an option to save more money if we're only doing secondary and not elementary. Just a thought. Thank you.
And Member Gould.
I just wanted to give kudos for the partnership and the free Wi-Fi capability. Do you have an update on the county's plan for their overlay net for access, especially in neighborhoods that don't have good access for internet?
I did mark that down from our last conversation. I don't have an update yet. What we have to do is basically we're going to need to take the data from the students who have hotspots checked out of them, and then loop that back to where the students are inside of the.
There's an easier way to do that.
Okay.
So they have red zone maps. For internet, for food disparity, all those. It's all the same neighborhoods. So if you look at that, you can get the zip codes and just call, I forgot her name, but who's ever running that project for Mayor Demings, and she can tell you how fast they're going to be putting those, I don't know, what do you call that?
Like the hotspot,
No, not the fiber
optics.
optics. They call it something else, though, when they make a net. Anyway, where you can get access.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would, rather than doing a lot of analysis, that's the quickest way to look at it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Member Gould. Member Farrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Is when we give these to students, are we looking to make sure that is it one per family, or are we doing one per student?
That's a great question. So it is actually a requirement of the T-Mobile grant that it is one per family or one per household.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure if there's a way to save a little bit, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Farrant. Member Felder.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the work. I know it's been difficult. I remember the first time I met you in your position, and I was asking about, we need more? And you said, but this is the only one. I said, oh my God, okay, you are doing a great job. And I'm so glad, Member Gould, you did talk about the hot spots or the lack thereof, because I know in my district there are some concerns, and I really would like to know, how, as soon as you can, what that map is and will they have access, because a lot of the students, they can't do the homework because when they come home, the Wi-Fi is off. I'm having issues with my own trying to do stuff with my laptop when I'm not in board meeting to try to pull it up because of the problem with the Wi-Fi in the 32805 area. That's a vicious area in terms of trying to get active Wi-Fi, and I know probably other areas may have, but I know we do. So I really would be one to appreciate when you look at that map that Member Gould mentioned, to see how that works out, because that's part of the frustration when students don't have their homework. And they come back and they say that, did you not have a homework, or were you really having Wi-Fi problems? And some of them are really having the Wi-Fi problems. They can't use it. This is awful. But so who do we work with? Who are the people that we get the Wi-Fi from? Is it Spectrum? Who do we get it from?
Our internet access at the district office is provided by AT&T and at our schools.
And AT&T. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'd love to know how that's going to work so that our students can, be able to get access to that, because that is a problem. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Felder. Member Byrd.
Thank you. And are we, do you know anything about the federal infrastructure grant, federal infrastructure bill that included internet and home internet usage are we doing anything? It went through the county. Okay.
So we don't have it.
Okay, so the county's doing that. So that there's nothing that they can provide for schools, is what I'm saying, like to give to students. Like there's nothing we could be getting from that to give to students.
When we initially, so there were some programs that were released with around the same time as Esser and other things, and those programs, I initially started looking at some of those programs, but they are now in flux as lawmakers are trying to figure out if they're being appropriately used for families that don't have internet access, or are they being used by families who may have internet access, but because they qualify, they've stopped using that internet access and now they're using it instead. So there's been some flux there. I'll need to look more into anything new that has come out to see if there's something that we can take advantage of. But
Okay.
that I was initially looking at some programs, and as it became, there was a letter that was sent out that was saying to each congressperson saying, hey, we're going to need your support to just extend funding until I believe it was September or October. And so that concerned me to say that that would be something we would move towards when funding was so much in flux. But I'll definitely look into that also.
Okay, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Byrd. That completes questions.
All right, thank you. I will now turn the presentation over to Doreen Concolino, our Chief Financial Officer.
Oh, yes.
Just a little bit.
Like help from the back, please. Thank you.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Staff has prioritized in order of consequence, although of no less importance, ESSER-funded initiatives that, if eliminated, would have the most significant impact on our core business. First, ESE staffing specialists. As shared earlier in the presentation, an ESE audit indicated the need for additional staffing specialists and support personnel. The additional ESSER-funded positions have proven vital in supporting our ESE students and families. This initiative has been selected as the #1 priority. As the role of our principals evolves and their responsibilities increase, assistant principals provide much-needed administrative support. This initiative has been identified as the 2nd priority. Student services, including mental health counselors, school social workers, and school counselors, is ranked 3rd for consideration. Direct services, training, and school support have proved essential in supporting our students. 4th, the Human Resources Division has identified the Career Fair virtual job platform as well as 2 staff positions critical in maintaining efficient operations. And then finally, in no ranked order, drinking water filters and student hotspots. Drinking water filters are estimated to cost $60,000 annually and may be folded into maintenance funding. And at $600,000, maintaining student hotspots through the completion of the current contractual obligation is possible through non-recurring funds. In total, staff recommendations equate to $16.89 million to the general fund, of which $16.29 million requires recurring funds and $600,000 may be paid through non-recurring fund balance. Here are our current financial obligations to be folded into the fiscal year 24-25 operating budget. The fronted 3% of the current salary proposal equates to approximately $38 million in recurring dollars to the general fund. This aligns with the $48.6 million set aside in fund balance in the current year to pay out the fronted 3%, and also includes the increase to retention supplements, the select ESE instructional support supplements, as well as the cost of the fronted 3% for all of our grant-funded positions. The increase to healthcare benefits will cost an additional $26 million, and the recurring cost to maintain the ESSER initiatives presented today total nearly $16.3 million. We have just learned that there will be a nominal increase to employer-paid retirement contributions, likely costing the district approximately $1 million. This is positive news. The next 3 items will be included in the 24-25 operating budget because they have become essential to the work that we are performing across the district. COVID has shifted our mindset to update some of our operational processes to ensure business continuity without the need for face-to-face interaction. Scribbles at $2.2 million supports online new student registration and digital student record management. DocuSign and Smartsheets at $700,000 provides workflow efficiencies in the daily operation of the school district. Reflex Math is $330,000 and provides online educational tools that supplement instruction so that parents and students have access at home. The last item, the PCG Ed Plan program at $250,000, is a collaborative threat management tool to manage the documents and processes related to the new Florida threat management model, as well as self-harm incidents and Baker Acts. Mental health categorical funds will cover this expense. Total 2025 obligations will impact the general fund at an estimated $85 million. The Esser funding cliff does compound the financial landscape. The ending of federal pandemic relief funds and declining enrollments create challenges for districts nationwide. Folding Esser-funded programs and positions into the general fund may necessitate a corresponding cost offset to the operating budget. And with that, I will turn it back over to Superintendent Vasquez.
Dr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you to all the members of our team. I know you have been working on this for quite a while, and that the decisions are not easy ones. Our next steps would include taking the information gathered this afternoon from the board and incorporating that into the budget priorities that we have categorized on slide 22, and our team will be able to inform the board if any of the priorities listed on that slide or any of the others that were mentioned today will not be able to be incorporated into next year's budget. With that, I turn it back over to the chair.
All right, thank you. Let me recognize Member Gould first.
It's not as much of a question about this list. You all have done a phenomenal job with a very, very difficult task, because everything that we put in place, we really need in our core infrastructure. And when you get to use some of those tools and then trying to say, especially things that work, to remove them, it's a very hard decision. So excellent job of really trying to preserve as much as possible. I know that the social media bill passed and was sent back to with revisions, and it looks like it's going to pass for 14 and under. Is there any indication that we're going to have any responsibility for managing now all of the students' social media? And if so, that sounds expensive in the future. So, what, if any, responsibility might we have, or guess we might have for managing access to social media?
So currently for OCPS students, social media is blocked on OCPS devices for students. And so a bill that talks about social media access underneath any age would not directly have any access to us unless we change that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about our devices, but we know they bring other devices into the school, and they're not supposed to access them. But, you know, what if they do, and where is our responsibility? And if their parents have not removed social media from them, have we started to talk about any of that yet, or dive into any of that yet, on what that might be? Because just like other things that you wouldn't think would be under our realm of responsibility, it often ends up there 2 legislative cycles later, on average.
No, I think that is a great question, and you know, that goes into the piece of, obviously, if someone comes in with a personal device, joins the network, but then they are underneath the age of 14, how do we make sure they can't access certain pieces of resources? So that is something not specific, I'll be very upfront, not specific to social media, but just overall, that is something that we have been looking at to make sure that if someone joins the network with a device and they're not authenticated, that they don't access things they're not supposed to be able to. So the way we handle that right now is we actually, if you join the network with a device that we can't tell who you are, we just filter that device at the most restrictive setting, what would be for someone who's underneath the age of 14 or a child. So right now, based on how things are, it would be a change that we would, well, actually it wouldn't be a change because social media would still be blocked.
Okay. I did see, I think I forwarded it to you, when I was at the CASPA conference, I saw a software that seemed a little bit more robust than what we were using. So it may be exactly the same, I have no idea. But it was impressive, and of course it was more for filtering all kinds of stuff, but it seemed like it could lock right down, just as you're describing. That we have that ability, but then let the things through that we need to let through, like if they need to use YouTube for class for that period of time, or restricted to just those topics. So, all right, thank you.
Dr. Vasquez, did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to add to the comments that Mr. Dragon stated. We are waiting for clarification from DOE as to what, if any, additional responsibilities will be put on the district. Because our current cell phone policy states that students' cell phones must be put away from bell to bell, that helps us a little bit. And we will then wait to see what the direction is from DOE regarding our role in complying with the new legislation. And there are no additional dollars that have been allocated towards that, so that may be something else that we have to dip into the one pot to be able to support if there are any additional responsibilities on us.
All right, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it's 13 and under. I think parents can, 14 and 15 can give, 14 and up. Yeah. Well, 14 and 15 need parental approval, and then 16 and up can, I guess, do it on their own. So the fiscal impact to the general fund is $84.77 million, and we've identified dollars to cover that cost.
So we're exploring. We're reviewing the new budget that has just been released, but I do believe that we likely could cover everything that we are showing you here.
Okay.
So if we're looking at about 2.7%, I think we're probably, and again, really high level, I think we're probably talking about 40 million. That would include any incremental increase to categorical funding. But since we typically overspend on all our categoricals anyway, then those dollars could be used for salary benefits programs and such. We are looking at the class size ratio at our schools, because now we can be by grade grouping instead of by classroom. The legislature, it appears, is estimating a 4.89% in property values. So in looking at that, of course, the RLE is already part of the FEFP, but we have our incremental special millage. So again, at that percentage, based on the county valuation, that could be another $10 million. We do, as the chair mentioned a bit earlier, we do fund lapse, salary lapse. In the current year, we actually funded $35 million, have no thoughts or intention, because I really do believe that we are starting to fill and retain individuals. So our lapse will certainly not be that high, but we have a little bit of flexibility there. So all in all, based on the board's priorities, I am fairly confident. Again, we need to go through the budget. It's such a quick turnaround, but I do believe after discussion with the superintendent, that is likely possible.
Wonderful. Did they, because I know that the budget was laid on the table for the legislature on Tuesday, did they roll back the RLE? Did they leave it
They
stable?
did not. They
Oh, good. That's great news.
They left it. I will tell you, too, I did reach out to Scott because you had asked me earlier about the budget timeline. And I knew it dropped Tuesday, and I knew there was 72 hours. That was my extent.
Yes.
He is either in Tallahassee or on his way back at this point. But what he did say to me is that it will be finalized by 11:54 on Friday morning.
Yes.
That doesn't mean the governor signs it on Friday. When the governor receives it, he has 15 days, but there is no timeline to when they actually provide it to him. But after Friday at 11:54, there's no major changes to the budget. There can only be line item vetoes.
Right. And they usually don't send it to the governor till June. Only
He said the last time it ended this early, June 2nd, was when he signed it.
Because the governor needs time to see what he's going to veto. So usually he knows what's there, and then he decides it's veto, then they send it to him, and then he rolls out the vetoes like a week later. So I think this all looks great. I think the whole team did a great job in trying to prioritize what was important to the district. I love that we're keeping the APs at our schools, because as I said earlier, that's so important. I do have a question about the PCG Ed Plan program. Is that the portal that the DOE finally rolled out? And I'm really like Baker Acts. What's up with that?
Yeah, so no, that is not, the state still has not rolled out that portal yet. With the new threat response system, we are required to document and send to the state a lot of different things. So this is just a portal where right now we have a SharePoint site that does all the threat to others, and so schools go in and they put all the information in. They can only see their schools. If kids go from school to school, it doesn't transfer. Same with the mental health. We put in every time a student has a suicide risk assessment, so anytime they're even assessed, we put it in our SharePoint portal. But again, the only people that can see it are, a few people at each school, and then the district people. And then we also have a portal where we put all of our counseling referrals. The Ed Plan is connected to our Skyward, so it's updated with the students' names, every day. And so if the kids move from school to school, you can see them, it's still only the people that should be seeing the students, but it would have, so you could pull up a student and see that they had threat to others, and also it had a suicidal, threat 2 months ago, and they are having counseling now. So all of that would be in one screen for the student, and it would move with the student so that we'd be able to know more information from one spot.
And do we report all that, including Baker Acts, to the state, to the Department of Education?
Yes. So the Baker Acts now have to be reported within 48 hours. It's the same as like seclusion and restraint. So you have 48 hours to put that in to the state of Florida, and then at the end of the year we report all of the counseling, and then at the end of the year the threat to others, they report those also.
But if a child is Baker Acted off school property, obviously we wouldn't have to report that.
No, although we keep track of that right now, and we can put that into Ed Plan if we chose to, if we know about it, when we find out about it, because we do find out about it and do reentry meetings when we do find out about those.
So when and this has nothing to do with budget, I'm just curious. When it's sent to the state, are those records sealed? Or can say a child is going into the military and they've been Baker Act like in 3rd grade, 4th grade, would that impede them from getting any type of clearance? I know I'm off topic here, but
I would have to double check. I know that it's
later.
not widely, it's not anybody can just find out about it, but I wouldn't know if it would be sealed for military or whatever that is.
I'll talk to somebody. Thank you. All right, great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Member Castor-Dental.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I echo what Member Gallo said, that this is a difficult task, and you all went through it, and the choices you have made so far make sense. And I had a question about the ed plan as well. I see it has a $250,000 price. Since it is related to the Florida threat management model, do we have funding that has been put toward that from the state?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. It's coming out of the mental health fund that the state provides, the categorical funding. So that kind of comes from the Safe Schools funding, but no, it's not extra. They didn't give us extra for that platform, no. We're just budgeting it out of what they provide us.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it's another mandate or unfunded mandate that we. Well, I mean, it's funded, but it's a.
We have to keep track somehow, and they do not fund us or give us funds to track that, and so this is the program that we're using to track it.
Right, and if they do come through with that portal, will this be redundant then? Or depends when you see the portal?
It depends on when we see the portal, because the portal could just be that last reporting piece. And again, this helps us to know the whole child and have all that information in one place.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Castanero. Member Byrd.
Thank you. I too want to thank all of you and the superintendent. Your staff has done a great job. How much money were we spending, or how much money was the Esser funding at the very beginning? It was a lot. How much was it?
The total of
$850 million. You're not on. There you go.
the total amount was over $750 million.
$850 million.
Oh, thank you. 850.
Right, and I realize a lot of that went to COVID and things that we had to do for that, but to be able to pare that down to $16 million is quite an impressive task. So I just want to again thank all of you for your thoughtful work on this. It's very good. I'm wondering if I just want to throw this out. If we've explored any of the online tutoring options, and the reason I ask is because as we were talking about staff shortages and these programs, some of these programs we had to get rid of for kids where there's losses, and I was thinking about interventionalists that we use that were helpful. FSBA did a presentation when they came here to our district on varsity tutors, which is just one of the ones. Do you remember that presentation? It was really good, and they talked about how some school districts are implementing it and they're seeing great success, but they can have it on demand, so a teacher can actually send a child in their classroom over to a computer to work with a live tutor at that time in the classroom, working on a concept that they're not understanding. So I don't know if we've explored that, but another benefit to it they were talking about was it's a staff incentive for them when they go hire tutors, they hire within the district for them to tutor through the platform in the evening and get extra pay. So, it's just a thought. I was thinking it might help with some of these things we have to cut. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to just bring up while we're talking about budgets, I want to make sure that I noticed I did not hear anything come up about the late start times that were approved last legislative session, to be starting, I believe, next year, if I'm not mistaken, right? 25, 26. I was hopeful that maybe this legislative session something might be changed about that, but I didn't hear any talk about it. So I want to make sure that we are thinking ahead about possible costs that we're going to incur implementing that next year, because some of that we may be able to start thinking about and working on. And we also had a session on that at our FSBA conference. And one of the things that they talked about was starting in November the year before, which I must guess would be this coming November, talking to the community and sharing about the changes and starting your community meetings and starting talking to the municipalities, because you're going to have to change, make sure there's sidewalks, make sure there's lit areas where now you might be doing changes with bus stops and having younger kids in the dark instead of the older kids in the dark. And they had districts that have gone through it already, talked about the things they had been through and the difficulties they had faced and what they did and the focus groups they put together. And it took a lot of planning. So I just want to make sure it's not all budget related, but I just want to make sure that we are starting to think about that and possible budget implications that might have for us this coming year as we prepare. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Byrd. And along the same line, I think in community conversations, that's our opportunity also to try to develop enough support, or if you will, opposition, to change that requirement. Because regardless of putting in place the sidewalks and the lighting and other things like that, the compression of our schedules will create the need for more bus drivers. And money is not adequate to buy more bus drivers when there's just a shortage of bus drivers in general, and you compete with Disney and SeaWorld and Universal. And so I think we've got to do all that we can. I know that Roberto's team in transportation's put together a lot of information. They're all over this. So we will have the data that we need. We just need huge turnout of public support on that issue. And I'm sure that Member Gallo will be able to help through FSBA to make that a statewide effort. I have one question for you on the FRS. And well, before I echo everything that all the board members have said. Member Byrd, your comment about how much work, thought, and effort went into taking that huge amount of money and figuring out what was the 16 million most important. I'm just incredibly thankful that we have the team in place to do that. I cannot imagine handing that responsibility over to the board. There aren't enough hours in the year for us to have sifted through all that you did and come up with the recommendations that quite honestly align exactly with the board's priorities. So it's a good feeling to know that we are all swimming in the same direction. And so thank you all for all the work behind the scenes, and Superintendent for the team that you put together to do this. Thank you. A question on the FRS, because I know on Tuesday that number changed. I was out of the loop. I did what I always say I'm going to do and didn't pay attention to my iPad, but it wouldn't have mattered. I didn't see it. So the FRS contributions were reduced from what they were originally projected to be. Can you define the difference in terms of our contribution and what we feared it might have been based on, I think, the governor's budget?
Well, there's two pieces to that. So there was legislation regarding the 3% COLA for those that have already retired. And the cost of that was going to be astronomical, and school districts would have absorbed a large portion of that. I didn't have a specific number other than hearing through the Finance Council that it would have been cost prohibitive to school districts. The dollars that we've been quoting regarding the cost to FRS employer was about $14 to $15 million. And the reason is because over the last 4 or 5 years, that has been our average increase. Actually, in the current year, our increase is about $21 million. But when you look over the last 4 or 5 years, that average is 14 something, just under $15 million. So when we're looking at what we're looking at now, it's something that, and the reason I can't give you an exact dollar amount today is because I have to wait for the instructional salary increases to post so that I can use those new salaries to then project what our contribution cost is going to be. But I can tell you that right now we're somewhere between $600,000, $700,000. So I'm thinking once we load the increase to instructional salary, I believe we're going to be somewhere around $1 million. But I want to hold on that until I actually do the calculation.
And that's $1 million instead of the increase that we had previously been seeing of 14 to 15 million.
Correct.
And that changed on Tuesday.
I got a text from Scott around lunchtime on Tuesday.
Okay. And I think we have a little time left over. There's two things that I wanted to talk about at the board table, and one was the ending of the impasse meeting, and the other was the email that we all received from the rabbi. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's okay. After that's why. Oh, you buzzed back in. I had bumped. Oh, never mind. I thought it was from before. So, with regard to the impasse meeting, I did not learn, and I don't think the board members learned until I was exiting the building, that the change had been made and that part of the district's ability to accommodate the union's request, is what I think I understand it to be, to absorb or provide a discount of 50% for that first year, was made possible by this news that we would not have this expense that we were anticipating. And when I reflect on comments that were made by, I'll just say the board in general, comments that were made that some of which would not have been made if the board had understood that it wasn't until 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning that the flexibility, financial flexibility, existed. And it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. It's not for me because I'm no good at football, but it's easy for all of us to look back and say, wow, why didn't we do this or do that? The one thing I wish is that we had known that, because I think the comments that were made that did not reflect favorably on the district, it's not the board's obligation to make sure things are always favorable, but transparent and accurate. And in retrospect, some of the comments that were made, I don't think would have been made, and I don't think they were accurate because the board didn't have the benefit of that information. And I wish that that had not unfolded the way it did. And I did reach out to Scott. I think 3 of us learned about it on our way out, and I reached out to Scott. I think it might have been Member Gould who said, boy, I hope that's in the news you could use, to ask if, to ask if that could be included in the news you could use. It wasn't, but I want to be clear on this. Scott and I talked yesterday, and I think his explanation makes all the sense in the world. Trying to weave that into a news you could use in a way that the public would understand would have been very difficult. So I understand why that wasn't. I think here at the board table, we could have talked through that, and I just want to put that on the table, because I think, not that there's any way you can unwind that clock, but I think with the benefit of that information, some board members might not have said what they said. And I'm going to then take input from each of you on this or whatever else, but then I do want to talk briefly about the communication we got from the rabbi. We are all copied on. I know the superintendent is, and I frankly need some help and some direction, and I rather us try to do it at the board table if you all are comfortable. So Vice Chair Gallo, you're recognized. I'm sorry, Member Byrd, you did want to, okay. Vice Chair Gallo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, impasse is never fun, and it's not the day of impasse. It's all the time leading up to impasse. It's all the preparation that the board did. This impasse was way nastier than the last impasse. I still have PTSD from the last impasse, but this one was the pre-impasse was really nasty. Like, this board was dragged through the mud. We were getting so many emails that we didn't care about teachers. We were having our own legislators tell us that we're doing the wrong thing and tagging us all over social media. It was a lot. And I know that as a board, we agreed to impasse because we wanted the money to get to the teachers sooner, and we thought that this was the quickest way. And since the union had tried to get us to waive the impasse waive the magistrate back in 2022, we felt like maybe they would waive it this time and we could get here sooner and we could get to a resolution sooner. So yes, I will only speak for myself. I was very frustrated on Tuesday just because all the work leading up to it. On the district's part, it wasn't just the board, on everybody's part. And we were there because we felt like we had no other option but to be where we were, and we had a very difficult decision as a neutral party to decide what we were going to do, and we take that extremely seriously. So I agree with the chair that when Mr. Mandel spoke and said they'd reached agreement, if he would have started with, because I knew FRS wasn't going up. I knew last week it wasn't going to go up. I knew it was in the budget. I knew that it wasn't going to be $16 million to the district. I'm not allowed to talk to anybody about anything doing to bargaining, so it's not like I could have called up Maria and said, hey, Maria, I know we thought we were taking a $16 million hit, but we're not going to because this is what's going to pass. And I understand that you don't know for sure until the budgets get laid on the table. But had they led with, like, listen, the only reason we're allowed to do this is we thought we were going to take a hit to the budget that we're not going to take, and so it freed up some dollars, and we want to make sure that we pass those on to the teachers because it's important to us, because I know it's important to the district, and I know it's important to Superintendent Vasquez that it's not just the board's priority, it's her priority that she takes care of all of her employees, including her teachers, and she would absolutely pass on any additional money to those teachers. But it would have been nice to have that information because you're up here and you're frustrated and you're angry that you had to go through all that. And we've been in position, especially the board members that came in with me in 2018, where we were told there was no money, we were told there was no money, and then there was always more money. And there wasn't always an explanation that came with that. And I'm not talking about our current superintendent. So it was just really frustrating. So I think for me, I would have still been frustrated, but if I would have known that the money came from FRS and that was a recent development, I would have understood, okay. And had we been told just what happened, had we been told the sequence of events that led us to where we were and how we got there and why that resolution couldn't have happened 4 months ago, because I think the frustration for me came from that. Like, we were able to do it in 2 hours on Tuesday. If it was that simple, why didn't we do it 8 months ago or 4 months ago when the teachers could have had their dollars? So we were frustrated for our teachers. We were frustrated for ourselves. And we wanted to make sure that it was communicated. And I agree with the chair. I don't know how we get the communication out, but I don't want our teachers to think that we had that money and we were playing hardball and then we just found it. Like, we found it because the budget dropped and FRS wasn't what we expected. I think that's important for them to know, that we don't play games. We don't do that. Like, we want to give, it's a priority for us. And if we had the money, we would have offered it beforehand. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And that concern that the public, our teachers, may still have walked away thinking that we were holding back, and it is troublesome to me. But I also know that we only see it through our lens, and there may have been compelling reasons why the board wasn't told that at the table that I don't know and others don't know. So, Member Salamanca, but I feel like the comments that were made in retrospect were detrimental and by board members and not accurate because of the lack of information. Member Salamanca?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important that teachers and just in general the public understand about the FRS money because, there's folks that have reached out saying, conveniently, the district found that money in the last minute, and the optics are not great. And this board spends so much time with our staff and the superintendent in different meetings really questioning where we could find more money. Like every time we could, we really did that. And I think that was part of my frustration on the day of as well. Because we did find, but I think some of my comments that I made, I still stand by on, and many of these were not to the district because I knew a lot of the good faith negotiations that went into place of what we had. But it was the first time that we were hearing of proposals and solutions from other parts of the bargaining side that kind of came up for the first time at impasse. And so those frustrations, I think, was what I was speaking to. Obviously, I think the back and forth, the messaging, the graphs, all of that could apply to both sides. But truly, we were looking at a process where we were being told that that we are playing this adversarial role when we've been back at the table and seen the other side the whole time, and how could we possibly be neutral at this moment? And that's incredibly frustrating because I'll speak for myself, but I also have seen the hard work that this board has done on preparing for this moment to be able to be impartial, to be neutral. And I think my frustration was also when, if I'm being told I can't be this neutral party in a moment like impasse, and that's not the preference, then, I would rather not be it. I don't want to be at impasse. I would love for all of this to have been sorted out before, and for some of the solutions that were proposed at the actual impasse to have come up earlier in the negotiation and bargaining table. And so I do want to, I want to clarify that I do believe that this district and the superintendent did everything they could to find every dollar they could. I think the fact that even in that 2-hour lunch, they were able to scramble and figure out the numbers for the FRS money shows how much of good faith we were trying to do to bring the money that we could find to the table. But no, my disappointment and the process itself and how long it took for us for the first time to hear alternatives and solutions. I still stand by that statement. If folks have a really hard time seeing this board as a neutral party, then let's not get to impasse. Let's get this done where it's meant to be get done, which is at the bargaining table.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Salamanca. And you're absolutely right in that the union could have brought that proposal any point along this very long path. Member Gould.
Thank you, Chair, for bringing this up, because I think even though we all individually prepared so much for that impasse hearing, to come in with open hearts and open minds and really listen to both presentations, and it had an excellent outcome. Thank goodness that the budget was laid down and we did have some opportunity within what was going back to school districts to do. I think procedurally we didn't have, and I don't know if it's even possible when you're in this quasi-judicial, because, in 12, going on 12 years, this is only and hopefully second and last time, I'm going to say that again, last time that we have an impasse hearing, and if there was a way for them to talk to include our counsel, which would have been Mr. Pomerini, in that, so that we could have not heard the facts, but that they were coming to present an option for a solution, so that we could have had a minute to kind of not try to listen to very wordy language with lots of numbers in it, while processing that we had a solution, which was fantastic. But a couple of other things. I am confident that when the staff presents the numbers are the numbers, because you can validate them. I mean, if you take the time, you can go validate them. So I'm never worried about that. I think we've already talked about the communications. Here's another thing that, and I know the union's not going to be happy when I say this, but I'm disappointed about with the way that the union is approaching the district when negotiating, is the district, with a lot of input from members of this board sitting here and members of the board prior, have put in many innovative healthcare access options. And over the last 3 years in particular, and the upcoming year, we are up there with some of the largest companies in the world with various ways to access healthcare, including the clinics we're putting in site, the SureFit. Family coverage is a huge, huge, huge problem in this country. Period. The end. It's not an OCPS problem. It's worse in the state of Florida, but it's not even only a state of Florida problem. It is a national problem that is can't be solved when you have no way to make revenue. So the acknowledgement of, or lack of acknowledgement about those innovations and working with local healthcare professionals to find solutions was disappointing, especially when they would say over and over again they had national experts. Well, that's great, but when you get into Florida, it's a Wild West in healthcare. It just is. The procedural thing I already said, and whatever Mr. Richards wants to call it, if it's not collaborative bargaining, but it's, I forgot what he called it now, bargaining with articles of understanding, which is all the same thing. Thank you. We need to get back to that, because we are all in the same boat trying to deal with the same issues. And it's never, ever, ever adversarial. It is a lack of walking in each other's shoes, if anything. And also, what's good for the goose needs to be good for the gander. So one thing, I didn't go back around and push my button again the other day, but since you've given us this forum, I'm going to say it here. The president of the CTA asked that he could talk to each one of us. Well, we have a bargaining unit, and that bargaining unit has all of the real data right at their fingertips and disposal. So emailing us, briefing us, all good. I'm never not looking at the information that is coming in, that to make sure we understand, which causes us to ask questions of the staff and of the superintendent when we're in discussions about the money. But if we're not supposed to go, or our bargaining unit is not supposed to go talk to individual teachers, then we have to play by the same rules. We are accessible to our constituents. My teachers come to my roundtables. They talk to me when I'm at Windermere Park. I mean, we're accessible, but we can't always respond. Being accessible and taking information in, and that's the part that I think was so hurtful in many of the things that were said outside and in the pre-impasse misinformation campaign, is that we weren't listening, and that's not true. we're not responding because we are preparing to go into this quasi-judicial role. And until we hear everything in a formal way, you don't want to be prejudging. You just want to take in information. So I say that so that teachers understand that if I didn't answer every email, I was reading them and I was taking all of the data in, and be sure I was researching that data. And I think I speak for everybody on this board does that, because I know when we are in these public forums, we all come prepared with our questions. But it's not always a point of two-way conversation. Sometimes it's just data that you're taking in. So I wanted to say those things. And I am appreciative of both parties coming, and I also agree with Member Salamanca. We are professionals up here, and we don't need to be told over and over again how to do the role once we've understood what the rules and the role is. Once we have grasped that, we've got it. And our mission, each one of us, is the same as every other person throughout this entire district, and I would even venture to say our entire community, to make education an environment and a tool for our children to be successful in whatever path they want to follow. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Gould. Member Byrd.
Thank you. And I'm thankful, as always, for my board members, for your very wise comments. And I'm glad that you brought it up, Chair, because I wanted to bring this up with the board anyway. I reached out to FSBA, to Andrea at FSBA on, what is today, Thursday? Wednesday morning, yesterday morning, about the possibility of coming to our district and doing a training on bargaining, or sitting in and facilitating the meeting that we talked about having, where we talk about how to approach this better. Because I think besides the frustration just that we've already talked about, the process is frustrating, and it's frustrating when Mr. Richards comes up after and says, you wouldn't talk to us, you won't talk to us. And the same thing with the president of CTA, it's not against the law, you can talk to us. And I've been on the board for 5 years. We've gone through this every year, and that's not what we've been told. So there's so much confusion and so much, back and forth, that I think it would be super helpful to have someone from the outside come in and talk to us about the bargaining process. So I had talked to, I shared with Bridget that I was reaching out to her, and her and Andrea have been talking, and she's more than happy to, if it's the will of the board to pursue that, then she's willing to do that. But I think it might be a super helpful exercise for us to have her help. And she is absolutely happy to do it if that's our will. And I just want to quickly say that, there's been a lot said, like all of you have said, in the community about us. And I think the hardest thing has been the decisive or the divisiveness about that we're not in it for the teachers, or we're trying to cause a divide between the teachers and the union. That's what I'm hearing now, because we're unhappy with how the bargaining went. And I think what I really want to make sure is that we look at why this is like this and really look at the big picture. Why is it like this? And this is the state that has been created, the environment that has been created by the state. has made unions very adversarial, and they have no choice. They have to fight hard. They have to, do this to stay, to keep their numbers up. And this is what has happened now, right? So I want us to all be on the same side and to work, but I'm concerned that that is not the environment that has been created in our state, unfortunately. So I think, I just wish that, my concern is just for the teachers and my frustration. And I think it's a good question for teachers to ask. And I'm not trying to divide. I just think they need to ask, why was there so much flexibility from their representatives on the day of impasse? That's where my concern is. And if I was a teacher, and I was a teacher, and that's what's so frustrating, is we've got educators up here, people who were in the classroom. Why, as a teacher, I would be asking, why weren't you going and saying, okay, well, what can we do? What deal? Why were you not so flexible 8 months ago? Why all of a sudden on the day of impasse were you coming and trying to work out a solution? Because that was not, and we have a chart that shows every bargaining session, and that there was no flexibility there from their representatives. So my concern is just for the teachers that went all that time without getting paid. And why weren't they demanding, hey, go to the district and offer to be a little flexible earlier? I just want them to be careful and to protect themselves. So thank you for allowing us this time to decompress a little.
Thank you. Member Castellano.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for allowing us to hear the process on the day of our impasse hearing, because it was not communicated to us at the time. I was so happy that we reached an agreement. I almost didn't care how it came about. I was just so happy that we were able to say, yay, we did it. And then people who asked me afterwards when I'd see them, they're like, how did it go? I'm like, we reached an agreement. It's done. They didn't care either about how it all happened, but we were so happy. And this whole year, even last year, I know members of this board have worked really hard at nurturing our relationship with the union. We have met with them when they wanted us to meet with them, taken phone calls. I get texts, urgent, call me. I call. I go on visits. I know every one of the, I've had meetings. I know a lot of other board members have, a superintendent has. We have really worked hard on listening, being available, and understanding the union's perspective. And I thought that would really help us during our negotiations. And I was wrong. The whole process became so negative and adversarial towards us. It was really shocking to me. They're working on this board with you all, and in our meetings, which are often, they're private. They're not in the shade necessarily. But they're private discussions. Every one of you has talked about how do the teachers benefit? How do our professional staff benefit? How do our principals come out with this? Every time we've met, we have pushed for the benefit of every employee. Every single person has had a different angle or a different thought, and asked challenging questions of our superintendent and the staff. And those are private conversations. We do not go out and talk about what someone said in those meetings. But you have to rely. I was hoping that those relationships that we've built would establish that trust, so that when you're not in the meeting, you have faith in us. And the way that this turned, against us in such a personal way, I think is damaging to the future in how we interact.
Exactly.
Because the trust has been broken. I don't know why. I don't know if that's just a strategy to push for an end result during just this negotiation. And I know the state also has put on so much pressure on the unions that I think the unions now paint their allies as enemies in order to get ahead. But I don't think it's working. I think that the way, even though we reached an agreement, moving forward, I think this board may be gun shy in having those relationships and not feeling like we are trusted. And that's going to take a lot of time to heal. So I hope that we can have these meetings and conversations about what are the rules of play, what are the best strategies for bargaining, how do you get to an agreement sooner for the benefit of your employees. We need to have those, I think, to restore the trust and our ability to work together. But thank you for that opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Absolutely, Member Castellano. Member Gold?
So, I totally agree, which I wasn't even going to comment on that, but I totally agree with Member Castrodental. Trust goes both ways. We heard a lot about trust, but trust is not pitting against, but trying to gain understanding, right? Because you can't learn anything if you don't first seek to understand, and that builds trust. When somebody seeks to understand where you're coming from, you're more open to where they're coming from, right? On the trainings, I brought that up at the impasse, and I just wanted to clarify. And I think I only got one of these trainings, honestly, maybe two, but it was not only for the school board members. It would have been with the union. And it had a third-party expert in negotiations that went through the various ways to go collectively or collaboratively. And then I think there is certainly a role, and maybe Andrea is the expert in that, but I don't think so. I don't think that's her core expertise. Now, the role of the school board member, and then the role of the union, they may have outside representatives that could come in that. But I would encourage us to really go through a full-blown discussion with what I'm going to call right now the three entities, because when it comes to impasse, that's what we are, right? Mm-hmm. The school board, the district, and the unions, to hear collectively what is outlined, and then we decide collectively the direction that will work best for this district going forward. And not leave it up to, small meetings. I think we all need to be hearing the same thing, and at least the background of it, and then the justification on why one form of negotiation is chosen over another. The other thing that I said a little bit the other day, but I do want to reemphasize it, and Member Byrd really reminded me about it, is the healthcare cliff has been no secret. It has been no secret. And in fact, COVID helped abate it, because there was so much money thrown at healthcare, and we were all locked down, so we were all a little healthier for a little while because we couldn't share, except for COVID. But this cliff with premiums is not a secret. It's on the national news. It's in every magazine. It's even, if young people have to go to a doctor and they have to pay full charge, they understand it. It's not a secret. When and I know it's a small pot of money that we have to go around, but when we know there is something like that, where it would be better than being adversarial and being collaborative in an approach is really planning out for those cliffs, because you can't wait 5 years and then shore up something. And we were very lucky, as the superintendent and had pointed out, and her team pointed out, that we had the ability this year, because again of COVID, to be able to put together the kind of raise that we were able to pass across the table. So we're not going to have a circumstance like that again in the near term. The state is more interested in putting money into reserve than they are into investing in some of the infrastructure needs that we absolutely require in a high growth state. But we're not seeing those kinds of investments being made. So we're going to have to figure it out at the local level, and we have to figure it out together, all of the partners together, working on it together, not separately and then coming and those are very professional words.
Glad we don't have a transcriber here. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gould. Vice Chair?
Thank you. Actually, Karen kind of said most of what I wanted to say, in that that's the other piece to it. When the union was upset that we didn't talk to them, I talked to Clinton. I'm like Karen. If Clinton texts me, I call him back, even if I can't talk specifics. But so much of what is discussed is done during closed session, and by law, we're not allowed to discuss it. Like, we're not allowed to discuss it we're told you can't even discuss it with your husband. Like, we're not allowed to discuss it. So it's not like, if you were to ask questions, we wouldn't be able to answer. And so I think that's just like the hard part of the way the system is set up in the state of Florida, with the board. Like I said the other day, we're kind of like the child stuck between two parents, because we've got to follow certain laws. It's not that we don't want to talk to the union. And like Pam said, we do listen or read every email. We may not respond, but we do look at every email, and we do take everything into consideration when we're making these decisions. And we had the insurance trust come in a closed session and talk to us about the state of our insurance. Like, when I say we did due diligence, we did everything that we could pull out of our pocketbook to make sure that we were getting every dime that we could for the union. So anyways, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Gallo. Member Felder?
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair. And I'm glad that you presented us with an opportunity to just have some light discussion regarding what we have been through the last couple of days with impasse. And my fellow board members here, I love the way you all share your disgust in a very kind, cordial way. I'm a little different. I'm so glad that you all sheltered me from some of the stuff while I was going through what I was going through when it actually occurred. And now that I'm doing well and I'm getting healthier, I can share some of my disappointment. Some of the scathing remarks that were made on social media about this board, about this district, was more than hurtful. And the encouragement to not vote again for certain board members is hurtful. Dear Board Member Felder, on behalf of the Orange Tree Panther parents and students, we want to thank you for everything you did to make the freshman campus have bright hallways again at Dr. Phillips High School. All the lights are finally on and everyone will be safer. That is all thanks to you. It is a shame that it seems like downtown always has to be notified by someone in higher authority. Please run for the board member seat again. I am. When the time comes, Many Orange Tree families, including ours, voted for you when you first ran, and many more will vote for you in the future. I had to share that because of some of the remarks that were made on social media and the survey monkeys that went out. I don't need to reiterate or repeat what my fellow board members have said about the fact how we are standing with our teachers, and we do want a better way, Board Member Byrd and Board Member Gould, to try to see how to really understand the bargaining from both sides. So people this should not be a hate relationship. You got 3-4 people sitting on this board that were teachers, and one who was raised by a teacher, and one who was educated in this district. And every school I ever attended is now in District 5, where the talent real does reside. So I want to thank you, Chairperson, for allowing us, because this needed to be said. We needed to talk about it. And I want to thank you once again, board members, for sheltering me from that madness while I was going through what I was going through. So now that I'm able to digest this, but it is my hope, again, as other board members have said, we do want to come together, and we want you to know that we are not against our teachers, our administration, the district. We're not. We just have to find ways to work together. We can agree to disagree, but we don't have to say hurtful and damaging things to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Felder. All right, to close out this conversation, I don't remember which board member it was who said, I was just so happy that we had an agreement, and that's exactly where I was. I went back and watched I was so happy we had an agreement, and it wasn't until a couple of other board members started talking that I realized that certainly the perception was, yes, the union could have come to the table sooner, but we could have too. And then when I learned walking out the door that wasn't an accurate perception, I still struggle with that being left out there. And I agree that the news you could use is not the way to do it. I will probably wait till after ratification, but my plan is to work very hard to draft an email that explains the facts without casting stones, but that this board and this district put everything they could on the table when they did. And the ability to meet the district when the union, when they came to the table in the middle of impasse with a counter proposal, the ability to do that was because of the freeing up of FRS contributions that we expected. Because absent that communication, I think there's still there's a taste in people's mouth about the district that's incorrect and unfair, and shouldn't it be there? So I will work very hard to do that in the best the clearest communication that I can, but it bothers me that anybody looks at our superintendent, our district. You all have talked about the school board. I'm equally concerned about our teachers, our union members, thinking that the district didn't put everything on the table, or the superintendent wasn't responsive to this board, because that's not the reality. And it bothers me that some people are still left with that. So I will, when I get done with that email, I'll send it out, or I'll send it to Amy to share with you all as well. The other thing I would really like some guidance on, I think, Dr. Vasquez, this one's probably for you. I'm sure you've seen the email from a rabbi in our community, and I really, I just tossed and turned on this all last night. The freedom of speech rights of the student. Dr. Vasquez and I don't know if any other board members were at the event, the Central Florida Pledge. One of her student advisory, I think several of them were there. Sam was there. And part of that pledge is about trying to make sure that we do not inflame what's happening in the Middle East inflame that environment here. And so I understood from the rabbi's perspective, I recognize the rights of the student. I don't know if the school has parameters around the content, and I don't really know. The rabbi obviously thinks it's the school board. I mean, it was constantly a school board. So I do feel compelled to respond, but I would appreciate some guidance. And since we're all copied, I thought maybe we could talk about this openly here. Your guidance for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The school has been working, yesterday evening, and I believe all of today, both with the high school office, our legal department, in looking into what actually occurred. There were some concerns that maybe, this is picked up because content was being taught. It's verified by the school. None of this is being taught at the high school. The principal is meeting, probably has met, with the sponsor of the publication to get more information as to how this evolved. Based on the information that we receive, then we will be better prepared to look at next steps. I do want, just for the general public's benefit, for either our general counsel or deputy counsel to just speak about our policy as it relates to student publications, so that they have an understanding about what it is that we have in policy, that the board has put in policy. And then, the whole issue around freedom of speech. So I don't know who would like to respond.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, members of the board. So we have a policy, student publications, I think it's JICE, but don't quote me on that. Thank you, Amy. And it is a policy that says that we as the school, because the paper's being produced under our direction, we've retained full editorial control over it. And so there is a delicate balance, because then there's the other case law that comes in that says, Tinker versus Des Moines, that students don't shed their rights when they enter the schoolhouse gate. They do have a right to speech as long as it's not disruptive. So generally, when there is a discussion of controversial topics in a student publication, a student newspaper and such, the general rule is if you're going to do it, you would have both sides of the issue addressed. And so part of the thing is we're looking at the actual course of events as to what got published at the school got published. And we're trying to get that information sorted out. We got this late yesterday, so we're working through that process. And to the extent that there was no other side presented, and there can be another side presented, that may be what we do with it. We present the other side in a subsequent edition of the publication at issue. We could also do things like, if there wants to be a response from the rabbi to say, hey, this is inaccurate in the student publication, that could be a possibility too. But there is a fine line of controlling a publication, which we have a right to do, versus eliminating a student's free speech right. And it's a very context-specific, article-specific determination you have to make. And the sponsor is involved. If the sponsor has questions, the sponsor always gets the school principal involved. School principal gets involved, inevitably that call is going to get up to our office, because then they want legal guidance to make sure they're not violating anybody's rights. So we are trying to work through the solution on it after what's gone on, but it is a two-step thing that we have to look at. Control of the publication versus the student's free speech right.
Thank you. I also think it's worth considering whether the principal, the district also then puts out a statement that reaffirms our stance on all students are welcome, all students are accepted, because I think the concern that I'm hearing both from the rabbi and a couple of other emails is the impression it may send that the board is not sensitive to that issue, or that they are in agreement or with that. And I think that is probably an action that we need to wait till we know all of what took place when we do our response. We have a board meeting Tuesday, which may be an opportunity to do that publicly, as well as put something out if needed. But at this time, that's all the information that I'm able to provide, but we will definitely keep you updated. One last point, the principal has communicated with the rabbi that he is investigating, and that would keep him abreast of.
Okay, perfect. So for right now, we could respond acknowledging that we know that they're in contact and it's being looked into. I think that the idea of putting out a statement respecting all of our students, I think that is an excellent step. But what I didn't know, because so many times for y'all, so many times there's so much stuff I don't know, and unfortunately the way I learn too often is somebody sends an email and I'm like, okay, how does this work? So what goes in the student publication? I never really gave it any thought until this. I guess I figured that there were probably certain parameters. Actually, I didn't think about it, period. And now I'm thinking there's probably parameters. So for me, this is a learning experience right here. And John, when you talk about freedom of speech, what comes to mind is, to me, there's a difference between the ability to speak and the obligation to create a forum for that, or to push that out. I read the article. Be honest with you, I think I learned a lot, but then I don't know how much of it was factual. I understand the exception that the rabbi has, and I do think that in this particular environment we're in right now, it's so much better for us to not be in the situation of taking sides and making judgments, and focusing on how do we create the best possible climate we can right here at home, because we can't fix everything in the world, but we can sure create a good environment. I think that's our obligation, and that's probably will be part of my message back to the rabbi. But I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and hear from you, and for all of us, since we'll all be responding, to have some kind of guidance along the way. Thank you. Anything else? And if not, we have been here 3 minutes past 3:30. Then the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all.
I just read that. Yeah. So,
yeah.
We don't have to give a statement, but